everybody, the Roots of Ambition. We are finally here. Mr. Robert Ayres. I'm going to introduce this man. I got a quick introduction for him. You guys heard about his book. You guys heard about a little bit of his story. I hope some of you guys have reached out and got the book immediately. You will have a blast reading it. You're going to have highs and lows, like I said. So welcome back to the Roots of Ambition, where we dig into the pain, purpose, and perseverance of the fuel real access. We're host Danny Angel, and today we're joined by our friend Robert, U.S. Army infantryman and gunner. Robert served 3 years in the Army, earning honors like 2 Army commendations, medals, including 1 for valor and Presidential Unit Citation, 5 Army Achievement Medals, and the Combat Infantry Badge. Now a father, entrepreneur, owner of Liberty Pest Control, Robert's ambition was born from struggle and rooted in resilience. From military service to building his own company, Robert's journey is a powerful reminder that the ambition doesn't come from comfort. It's rooted in pain, perseverance, and purpose. Robert, welcome to the show, man.
Welcome to the show,
Thank you, brother.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Thanks for being here.
Yes.
Really appreciate it.
Man, I can't wait to get this started, bro. I know we talked a little bit before the show started, man, and I think we should have had the camera on as soon as you walked in the door, bro.
We should have.
Right? So we're going to reiterate a lot of the
maybe not.
Maybe not.
So I'm going to let my boy Angel, he's going to start off with some questions, right? We're going to talk about your book. We're going to talk about your childhood, obviously, your high school life, some military, some post-military experience, stuff you struggled through, your move to Antioch, and the man you are today, brother. So let's get ready for this ride, man. You ready?
Oh, yeah. I'm ready.
Let's go.
Well, thank you again for being here. The book was amazing, dude. Me and Danny were texting back and forth.
Yeah, bro.
Yesterday we were going over notes and we're recording things. It was actually...
Dude, I was like, bro, did you read that part?
Yeah.
Did you read that? Yeah, let's go, Rob.
I mean, I've read other books, similar, where it's kind of surface. You were raw.
Yeah, bro.
You were honest. I mean, you could tell you were really telling your story, right?
Yeah.
It was like this. It was, and this last part that you said in his introduction, rooted in resilience. Your book is all about
100%,
resilience,
brother.
And I text you and I meant it. Definitely acquire a new admiration for you. It was. Listen to your story was like, oh wow,
100%,
bro.
100%.
Different. So, anyways,
let's go, baby. Let's go.
So, and we read a little bit on the book, right? And you talk a little bit about your childhood, but can you tell us what it was like growing up? Just kind of walk me through who Robert was as a kid.
Yeah. So me growing up as a child, from the book, a lot of the things I talk about in the book is the raw traumas, little tiny things, more of the negative aspects.
Mm-hmm.
I think in one sentence, I said, "Oh, there was the trips to Disneyland. There was, but my focus wasn't talking about, how grass the green was, or how green the grass is, or anything else. It was the truth. How much weeds are in the grass.
Right. The stuff that you don't post on Instagram.
Yeah, the stuff that stays behind closed doors.
Right.
But that's truly who I was. But yeah, growing up, I actually looked up to my dad. My dad was that guy that taught me how to be an electrician, to run. He was a bigger guy, and me as a kid, I was able to fit in the crawl space. I was able to fit in the attic.
Oh,
so
by default, I was running the phone lines. I was running the cable lines.
Right on, dude.
I was, I had to learn that. And of course, you hear him outside like, what the hell's going on? What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm 7 years old. What the so it's like, learning to be handy.
Yeah.
My dad's always been in a car club before, he gave up his passion of being president of a car club, all that stuff, and chose married, life with
Yeah.
kids and everything else.
Right.
You know, and I believe my mom was the one that made my dad give up his cars.
Yeah.
You know, and so in that one part of the book, you know, is, you know, he sold the 2-seater.
Yeah.
That wasn't
Right.
a good family car. You know, a family of 4 can't be in
Yeah.
a 2-seater.
Right.
So he gave that up and he got an El Camino for himself. He got my mom a Mustang. I think that was kind of like the shut up, here you go.
Yeah. Here goes your little gift.
Yeah, here's your gift.
Stay off my back, girl.
Yeah. And then he got a boat also.
Right.
You know,
Oh, right on,
You
bro.
know, and so, you know, my dad was an avid fisherman. So he taught us how to fish. You know, his main thing was trout fishing. So, you know, it was Lake Chabot over in like San Leandro, Castrovelli area. There's a lake right there. We used to always go there. If it was the middle of the day during the week, if my dad wasn't in his office, you can find him the same fishing spot at Lake Chabot.
Oh, right on, bro.
Yeah.
Did you guys live
Yeah. So we,
nearby?
yeah, pretty much it's San Leandro. You're
So
within
your
10 minutes
entire
of
life
everything.
was San Leandro, your entire childhood, basically?
No, it was pretty much, my dad bought the house in the 70s. It was pretty much like a clubhouse for the car club.
Oh,
Oh.
and
pre fatherhood for him when
yeah,
he bought it.
yeah,
Right,
that
right.
was the bachelor pad.
Gotcha.
You know, they met my mom in Reno at Hot August Nights. You know, and they lived happily ever after. You know, my mom grew up in Pleasant Hill, and she'd never been to Oakland, San Leandro. She's never been through that tunnel.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
and so
Stayed away from the dark side.
yeah, and even like my mom tells a story about, you know, the childhood. You know, she called, you know, no phones back then, so she had to go to a payphone, and it was at Foothills Square at Oakland off of MacArthur.
Oh.
And you know, my mom was calling my dad like, "Oh, how do I get to your house again? I'm over here at this Foothills Square." And I was like, "What the hell are you doing there?" You know, that's a no zone. but you know, it was like, yeah, rooted 100% San Leandro, off Davis Street. You know, and yeah, just grew up there. You know, before going to the military, and it's just, you know, my dad was all about finances, so he taught me about finances.
Oh, okay.
You know, you'd see him reading the newspaper, looking at all the stocks.
Right.
You know, and I'm just looking at that like, I don't understand all these lines and numbers.
Yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
but his philosophy with, you know, that, he taught me, even if you invest $10, whatever it is later on, as long as you still get your $10,
Yeah.
you didn't lose or
Right.
gain nothing.
Right.
You know, because you only put in $10.
Right.
You know, and so it's like growing up about finances, he was smart man. Even like when we got tour money, you know, we got, you know, an allowance, you know, it was like 25 cents if we cleaned the toilet, or to clean the bathroom.
right.
It was little things, but back then it was like, oh, I got a quarter.
Man.
I'm
Yeah,
always
a
cleaning the
quarter will
toilet.
go-
Bro, a quarter back
Yeah.
in the days, bro, with the ice cream man coming by in the truck. Woo.
Yeah,
Let's go.
You know, and so, but whenever we had money, we had to learn how to fill out the checkbook ledger. Deposit.
Oh, right on.
Oh, wow. How old were you when he started doing that?
Oh, it was my mom and my dad were doing that with us as soon as we knew how to spell.
Great.
Wow,
bro.
that's
You
awesome.
know, and at the end of the month, we had to balance our envelope.
Good
You know, it was
stuff.
all about envelope money. You
Good
know,
That's
it's-
stuff.
awesome.
yeah. So there's always been a structure, you know, and
Right.
the older I got, I started learning my own ways.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and it's like, and I think that's where the older I started getting, my dad started seeing the defiance.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted, you know, he expected, you know, a certain way, because between my mom and my dad, they're realistic. They would say, you know, we've done this shit.
Yeah.
Let us teach you
Yeah.
so you don't repeat the shit we did.
100%.
But that's not how you heard it at that time.
No, I said, why can't these guys? My parents are strict. But,
Yeah.
you know, my parents, you know, they're no fun.
Yeah.
You know, but even like growing up, you know, then when it gets, you know, a little bit older, we're, you know, I'm hanging out with the kids in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
You know, the best time to go, you know, was right after 4th of July to pick all the little cherry, you know, the firecrackers.
Yeah.
That weren't exploded. The wick might only be so big.
Yeah.
But we were picking them up, you know, guaranteed on the basketball course, you can always find a lighter.
Yeah.
You know, and even at the elementary school, you know, if it's a weekend, it's game on.
There's always-
Yeah.
And,
Always.
yeah. So, you know, curiosity and, you know, adventurous and
Being
you know,
a young
all-
boy, man.
All that, you know, it was fun
Yeah.
for me. A headache for my parents. I see it now.
Yeah.
So, but now that you see it, now that you look at it back, right? How has those things that maybe were an irritation or whatever you want to call it at the time, like them being too strict, how has that shaped you now? Now looking back.
Oh, looking back, I'm like, oh, my parents were on point.
Yeah.
I am going to raise my son that same way. Everything my dad taught me, I'm going to teach him, but I'm going to try to hold my tongue because that was the big thing.
So
that kind of affected me. You know, it was like
the words.
Yeah, I've been told so much. I'm blunt. Speak harshly. I'm not. I may not cuss you out, but it's how direct and some people are like, oh, you're like a drill sergeant. I'm like, no, I don't see that because they actually had the scissor hand. Like, I'm not like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like I can talk very stern.
Right.
And very blunt. Right. I don't fluff my words. I'm
with your son or just in general? Okay.
And so I'm learning now I need to shape myself to say with more compassion, assertive communication.
Right. Well, it's like you want to put a filter and upgrade what your dad taught you and pass on the good stuff. And there's some stuff that you got to put through a filter and everybody has their own filter and realizes what should pass through that. Some stuff has to stay behind and that's how we grow. Some other stuff, you pass it on, like working hard. That's a good thing to pass on to your kids, right?
Yeah.
Like learn how to work with your hands. All those beautiful things that he taught you, those should definitely be passed on. But maybe some of the things you put on the book, those are the things that you need to figure out, okay, do I want to pass this on? Because the behavior will basically cause the same outcome unless we change.
Yeah, and that's one thing I'm doing is I'll catch myself when I'm, my son's 3.5, almost 4, and I'm a little strict with him still. I'm teaching him the structure, but what I'm doing if I do say, hey, what are you doing? Don't jump on the couch. I stop, pause, communicate with him.
Awesome.
Say, hey, this is why you can't do it. That's something my dad never did.
Yeah.
So now I'm incorporating what my mom, the things that my mom would do.
Right.
I, pretty much as a single parent, have to incorporate the yin and yang to actually be one now.
Absolutely, bro.
So that's the big thing. I'm at least catching myself.
Good stuff, bro. Good stuff. Well, we got so much to cover, bro. Right. One question I was real curious about, because I remember as a kid growing up, you saw on the news the earthquake in San Francisco, bro. Right? I just want to touch on it a little bit. I'm just curious. How much do you remember of that, dude?
I remember where I was standing.
Okay. You were standing on top of
one of those little storm grates.
Yeah.
So it was like pretty much we just picked up my sister from dance class or whatever she was doing. And we were about to leave. So we get, pretty much about to cross the street to go to the car.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you feel dizzy. It was like one of those then all of a sudden I remember right next to the dance studio, there's a red fence. And I just remember just seeing that move. And then you physically seeing the street.
No
just
way,
kind of
bro.
waving.
Wow.
And, like obviously we don't know, because, I think it was like 7, something like that. It was 91. You guys can do the math. But it was crazy. And then I remember, my mom was like, oh, it's okay, and so we go home.
Yeah.
And, I was so afraid to go inside the house.
Yeah.
Like, I just thought because my mom was listening to the radio as everything's going on. Obviously, no cell phones, no nothing. So she's wondering where my dad's at.
Yeah.
And so we get up to the house. And as soon as we go in the house, I remember some canned goods are laying on the kitchen floor.
Oh, wow.
And there was like a little hairline stress crack in the ceiling.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh man, the house is gonna fall down.
You're all
scared.
stressed out.
I'm crying. All that stuff. And then of course the neighbors are out. And and then I remember one of our neighbors. She was worried because her husband. That was the time that he's normally off work, and he would have been on the Bay Bridge.
Oh,
and
you guys already knew that had happened.
Yeah. So now this is like.
So as a kid, you're aware that happened.
Yeah.
That's
and
scary.
so like you're hearing the adults. You're a kid.
Yeah. You're nosy. Like what's going on?
Well, even if you're not, it's crazy how much kids hear and know everything.
Yeah. And so, or it was 89. Sorry, not 91.
Yeah.
But and so. Just doing all that, and then you're hearing the radio because they're playing the radio. The TV's out, so there's no TV. So, it's weird to kind of listen to the radio at the house,
Right.
And just hearing that, and then you're really hearing that, the people that are supposed to be on the Cypress Freeway, and that actually collapsed.
Ooh.
But luckily, nobody in my neighborhood, nobody I physically knew were killed
or injured
or anything like that.
Right.
But it was just like one of those like, whoa.
That's crazy. Right. When I read that in the book, it was a trip, bro, because I remember being in class, or not in class. Where was I? I was somewhere, I think I was at a rec center or somewhere, and you hear someone, hey, turn it up. And then you look, bro, like, damn, all the devastation that happened like that, dude, right? And I just remember, like, damn, it was funny because when I read that, it took me back to that time that I forgot. That's why I wanted to ask you that question, bro. Yeah. The fact that you knew where you were at when that happened was pretty amazing to me, man.
Yeah.
I want to fast forward real quick to high school. Two things, all right? So, one, you were getting in trouble, right?
Well, I was getting a little bit smart, but
we were getting too smart for our own good, right?
Yes.
So, a lot of people, man, to me, for one, bro, I don't like to bring up. To me, I just don't like to bring up the negativity because that's no longer I don't even know who that guy is no more, right? But at the end of the day, it's part of who we are.
Yep.
It's part of who we are now, right? Regardless if you try to forget it or you try to dismantle that, those experiences shaped you into the position and the man you are today. Right. So when I do talk about it, I like to talk about it in a positive light, right? So like all the dumb stuff I did, I try to reverse it in my head. Like, nobody really got hurt. Right. It was dumb. If I'm this age, of course I'm not doing what I did at the moment, right? I'm young. I didn't have a father. I didn't have a lot of guidance. I kind of learned on my own, right? But I want to bring you back to your high school because I think that's a huge part. And I tell people all the time, like, everything and every person I came across somehow, some way put a bucket into my life, whether if it was good or bad, right? For you, what made you be a little bit more mischievous in high school, right? Because I find a lot of the guys that I grew up with, what's crazy is they all had fathers. Some of them were good fathers, some of them were bad fathers, some of them didn't have a father like me. But I find that most men who had fathers were way more mischievous than most guys like me who didn't really have a father, right? What made you so mischievous at that age, bro? Even though you had a father who had an iron grip on you at some times.
Yeah. So it was definitely my rebellion. Got my license. I was grown.
Yeah.
I can do anything.
Yeah.
That's the mindset. I was like, I'm an adult now. I got my license. I got my license on my 16th birthday.
Yeah.
And I had a car. It was pretty much my parents. The main rule was you had to learn to drive a stick shift if you wanted your license.
Right.
And luckily, I still am today a little Volkswagen Bug enthusiast.
Yeah.
So I'm the old babysitter we had. They were sitting on their Volkswagen. It was like $800.
Oh, no way.
So my dad bought it.
That's cool.
He bought it because we were about that time. He probably bought it when I was 14. My sister was 15. She's a year older than me. To teach us how to drive stick shift.
And the Bug.
and it was a Bug. So eventually, once the clutch was all burnt out, I got to have that after me and my sister learned how to drive it. But yeah, so as soon as I was 16, I had my Volkswagen Bug, had my license, had my independence. And I think the day after I got my license, I got my first speeding ticket.
Yeah, we said it in the book.
Yeah, I remember it was on Bancroft. It was on Bancroft Avenue. But yeah, it was. But the main reason why I believe today that it was my dad got diagnosed with cancer.
Oh, when you were in high school.
So about the time I was 15 or so. My dad,
looking back, you think that's what
I started
got the feelings that maybe you didn't know how to express.
Yeah. So I hurt, like, what the hell? Like, even though he would, he talked the way he talked, it was still my dad.
Yeah.
Right.
And that was a life altering. Like, instantly, it's like, whenever you get diagnosed with cancer, the doctor always, you got 6 months.
Oh,
that's always,
fuck.
And so I think with that, 94, 95, I lost my grandparents. And then I think I want to say this is like 96 now. My dad gets diagnosed with cancer. So I'm like, shit, he's, the doctor at the time gave him 6 months to a year. And
so when your dad, when he was diagnosed, he came home and told the whole family? Or was it kind of like a hush-hush until you figure it out?
I believe in the beginning it was just in the house.
Okay.
But you guys knew as kids right away?
He told you guys?
Yeah. So the reason why it was Christmas time. We used to, when we actually used to get Christmas cards, we had a little string that he would hang up on the wall.
Right on.
And so he was up on a chair with wheels on it, balancing on that because we don't.
That he fell.
Oh, that's right. You said that on the book.
Yeah. And so he fell, hit his elbow on the ground. So when they did X-rays, that's how they found the cancer spot on his shoulder.
Right.
Oh.
And so of course there's, it was out.
I mean, there's no good way to find out that type of diagnosis, but that's probably one of the worst, right? Because you're not even
expecting
it.
Yeah, and like for him, he just retired from Pacific Bell, the phone company, 6 months beforehand.
Wow.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so, of course, I was thinking at the time, like, he's retired. He's always going to be home.
Yeah.
Right. Can't get away with nothing. But, then he gets diagnosed with cancer. I get my job at Pack and Save, which is like a Safeway. And I just start like hanging out with, there's a guy in the produce department. He used to hang out with him. He would smoke weed. I was already kind of like, once I got my job, once at 16, that's when I started smoking weed. That's when I, really started doing, a lot of stuff. And then, that's when I was like, just really trying to find acceptance somewhere, because I felt like once my dad got diagnosed, like I lost something.
Yeah.
So now I'm trying to find, validation somewhere else.
Yeah.
And, so I started hanging out.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And so I actually started hanging out with the older guys, thinking I was cool.
But that's you thinking from thinking back, right? So at the time, did you know that that's what you were going through, or it was just...
I think it was just living life.
Going with it.
Yeah. I was just going with it and enjoying it.
So the realization came now, looking back.
Yeah. Like years later is, it's, I can never go, my dad taught me to be a man, not to express feelings.
Yeah.
To be a man.
All right, let's touch on that right there. How do you feel about that now? How would you handle that same conversation with your son, knowing and your experience and everything you've been through now? How would you handle that with your son?
I tell him I love you every moment. I give him kisses, all that stuff.
Why? It's important.
It is. Yeah. And my dad, from what I can remember, maybe my mom can correct it, but I never once ever heard him say I love you to me.
Mm-hmm.
I heard it from my friends' dads.
Oh, wow.
And they'll be like, oh, you got, at my buddy Mike's house, and his dad, Big Mike, would be like, all right, mijo, I love you guys.
Wow. What the heck?
Fucking weird.
Yeah.
All right, yeah, love you too. Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
But it's like seeing that from another, family, another man. I'm like, I'm missing that.
Yeah. Also, you understood you were missing that.
I kind of felt it, and it was like weird, but at the same time, it was like, why? My dad had so high expectations.
Wow.
And I think I still have it today where I strive for being perfect. Just on everything. I have to cross all my T's. I have to dot all my I's. I have to overanalyze before I, do everything.
Right.
And I think it's because he wanted perfection, or at least that's the way he, presented it to my ears.
That, but can you say now that was his form of saying I love you?
I think so. Yeah. I 100%. I really feel it's like I don't even know if
pushing you to be the best you can be.
Yeah, is him knowing that I'm learning from him is his way. He had a different way. It's like I barely see my parents kiss.
Yeah,
I'm like.
But it was also a generational thing. Like, a lot of people from that generation, and sometimes it's also racial or like cultural.
Right.
Because like Latino families, especially older Latino families, like even with my mom, we started saying "I love you" more when I started saying it.
Right.
But like it was never
Right.
like constant. It's not like daily. Like I also say "I love you" to my kids every day. I make sure I don't go a day without telling them that. But that certainly didn't happen. It's just interesting how. But you know the real question, that one question that came out when you were saying is funny how you're saying all these things that you do now, right? You're a perfectionist, and you're all these traits, they are now an asset, come from pain.
Yes.
And it's often that way.
That's what I was gonna say.
Right? The beat to the punch, sorry.
No, good. So I was gonna bring
sometimes, you know, and now, you know, we all three of us have kids, and it's like those traits you can now identify that they are helpful, especially right now, you're starting a business. You know, all those things are going to help you, and I'm sure they have been helping you. Now, how do you think about providing something like that for your son, you know, where you have these things without the trauma? Like, because knowing that good things come from bad situations, but we don't want to put them in a bad situation.
Right.
So how do you think because your kid, your son's still, 3.5 years old? Mm-hmm. So you still have time, but, you know, how do you see yourself thinking, okay, well, I want him to understand these things without going the way I learned them? Have you put thought into that?
And I really believe it's with communication. Right. You know, he may not understand every word that I'm saying right now.
100%.
Mm-hmm. But, you know, if I say, you know, no, you have to take your steps left foot first. Yeah. But communicate, why should you do the left foot first? Why, you know, why lead with the left?
The why is so important.
Yeah.
Because then you're not just talking at them.
Yeah. And that's right. And I believe that's where my dad would talk to me, not explain nothing. And it's like, it has to be like this.
Yeah.
And you always had a why, but you couldn't ask why because you get in trouble for saying, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah. And then I'd get that backhand or, you know,
Yeah.
That's what I don't like it when people talk to kids like kids. Mm-hmm. Like, just talk to them like people.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Like when my kids, you know, now they're a little older, 10 and 13, but when they were young, when they'll be 2-year-old, and if he asked me a scientific question that was super complicated, I would answer it as if you were asking me. I wouldn't like
tiptoe
dumb
around
it down because he's a kid. Like, well, yeah, he's probably, to your point, is like, he's not going to comprehend it, but maybe not all of it, and maybe not now. Mm-hmm. But if you're speaking to them normal, not talking down to them or minimizing or diminishing the conversation, then they know they're always having a conversation at the same level as the other person. Versus, you know, the other way that some of us have been raised is like you become a young adult and you're used to this entire time having a conversation where you're below instead of, and so then there's the confidence. It's hard for young adults to have this confidence because you have the situation. It's like, you know, get a dog that has been abused and you try to pet it. It's going to keep doing that until it learns. Yeah. It's the same situation.
Yeah. Sad but true.
Exactly.
Shit, bro. We're going to get back to your dad, bro. Okay. Right? Because I have a lot of questions on that. But there's some few that really raised curiosity. And one of them was, okay, so high school, how was that feeling when you got in trouble and your parents had to come to your school?
Oh, yeah. The good old days. So a week before finals, my 11th grade year. So pretty much for that, the 11th grade year was my really rebellious year.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's when it really hit hard. And I was stealing bottles of liquor from Pack and Save. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and cigarette cartons of cigarettes. And I would sell them out of the back of my truck, in the back of the trunk, but the Volkswagen trunk's in the front.
Yeah. So, but like the front of your car.
Yeah, the front of the car. I was selling. But yeah, so, you know, it was, you know, and pass out bottles, you know, of course to the girls, like, oh yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so that day, you know, me and one of my buddies we cut school, and we went to one of my coworkers' house to. We were drinking Southern Comfort. Southern Comfort, Bacardi 151.
Oh, Lord.
You know, all those great drinks when you're young and dumb.
King Cobra.
Yeah. Those 211s.
211s. Old English, Mickey's.
We used to make margaritas with 99% cane alcohol.
Oh, dude, bro.
Because it was the cheapest thing you can buy.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, it was
not
like-
eat your liver.
Yeah, it was like the things I would always drink was the Cisco's, the Mad Dog 2020s,
Mad Dog 2020s.
211s or
Boonies.
the 112s. Yeah, all those little cheapo things down in a block a mile. That was my thing. But yeah, and so cut school, and I pretty much gave some bottles to some group of girls. On the way out of the parking lot.
Man.
So on our way back. At the time, I believe we had, so we cut the first 2 periods, and then we get back to the third period, the class right before lunch.
Oh, man.
And so we roll up, and I knew I had it easy because I had one of the electives, and all I had my class was making the newspapers, the school newspaper. I was like, it was easy.
You walk in the park, bro.
Yeah.
Have a girl do it for you.
Yeah. I was buzzed. My buddy, he stumbled out of my bug. Like, he opened up the door and just rolled out onto it.
No.
And I was like, you good?
Hell no.
I was like, hey, just close the door. So he dips off into the back parking lot by the tennis courts. I go to my class that's, part of the parking lot area. And then probably like 20 minutes in, and you got the fire department coming, ambulance coming.
For your boy.
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Passed out
bro.
in the tennis courts. And I
I don't
already
need to laugh, bro. But
I already assumed it was because of me. And so I always tried to cover my tracks. I didn't want to get in trouble.
Yeah.
And so, like, my Volkswagen, it was all customized, but I can just hit a button and the door's open.
Yeah.
And so I had one of my buddies go to my car. He got a bathroom pass, and I was like, hey, go get all the liquor. You can have it. But that way you get rid of the evidence.
Yeah.
So he goes, he gets out all the liquor, all that stuff. And so the bell rings for lunch. I start walking out with one of my friends, and, I kind of look and I see that there's another bottle. And so I pass it to her. She kept on walking.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm good. No, I had the one bottle that was left in there was like a half open bottle, in the back seat.
Yeah.
And the security guards, Carlos and Rui, they start going through my car, pulling up the seats.
ain't that bad that we know their names, bro?
Yeah. It's like I'm still in contact with Carlos, but it was, I remember that, they were looking, and I thought I was good. Because I thought all the liquor was gone.
Yeah.
And now they found that one little, I think it was like a pint ball or something.
Yeah.
The small, one that my buddy didn't want because it was already open. He had one job.
One job, bro. Yeah.
But so they looked through all that stuff, and then they're like, all right, let's go to the office.
Yeah.
I was like, man. And so they put me in this one room. It's kind of like the little holding cell type thing for, the Salinator police. They keep me in there, and then they're like, all right, we're ready to talk to you. So they pull me out of that to go to the vice principal's office. I go in there, and I just happen to go in the thing. I'm looking all bad. Like, can't believe it. Like, I was crying. But, and I just happened to look down the hallway, and you see out the front doors of the school.
Yeah.
And I seen the 69 Impala out front. Like the doors are right there, and you just see it parked right in front of the school. And I'm like, and that's on the main street. And I was like,
your heart dropped.
My dad's here. Granted, he's retired.
What was the feeling at that exact moment?
Oh shit! No, 100%.
Were you sweating?
Yeah, it was like
it
I would rather face my mom.
Yeah, of
Like,
course.
I think my dad's gonna hit me
in front of everybody, bro.
His backhand's hurt. But so it was like, I just look out there, and for one, I still have the Impala today, but that stayed in the driveway. It was a damn near rust bucket. You know,
Yeah,
never, you know, but seeing that in the front of the school, I'm
Oh
like,
man,
I
he's
know.
about to beat my ass in
Yeah.
front of everybody.
you know, and it's like, come to find out, he drove it because if he would have drove his truck, the truck went faster. And he needed to calm down.
Time to calm down.
He drove the
smart
Impala.
man.
Yeah, bro.
He never drove that car. You
Yeah.
know, I would always get caught for driving the car around the block.
Yeah.
You know, my mom would pull up and I'm like 14 years old driving around the block. She's like, "What are you doing? Put that back before your dad comes."
Yeah.
But yeah, seeing that, I was, oh shit.
Oh, dang.
And then they put me in the thing and instantly you see my mom and my dad there. I'm like, I start hyperventilating.
Did you feel better or you feel worse seeing both?
I started hyperventilating. I was like, oh, you know, I don't know if we can cuss on this show, but
Of course.
but yeah, I was like, oh shit.
Oh,
You know,
man.
I literally started hyperventilating. I didn't know what to do, how to think of an excuse, you know, because obviously, you know, I'm trying to cover my tracks. I thought I already covered my tracks.
Yeah.
But then, like, and they searched my wallet and they found weed in my wallet too.
Oh, brother.
And honestly, so it was a little tiny roach or something like that.
Yeah.
I didn't even know it was in there. Yeah. You know, it wasn't even worth saving. It was that small.
Yeah.
But yeah, that security guard, Ramona, she found it and I was like, that ain't mine. You know, I was
Why'd
like,
you put that in there, girl?
yeah. You know, but yeah, so like they got me for, you know, having marijuana, distributing alcohol to minors, you know, having alcohol on school campus.
Ouch.
Oh, it was
Almost killing your homeboy in the tennis courts.
Oh, and then going home, knowing that he's in the hospital with alcohol poisoning.
Wow.
Damn.
And so, you know, my mom and dad are like, hey, you know, he could die.
Damn.
You know, it's going to be on us.
Oh,
You know,
shit got real, huh?
it got real.
Yeah.
How was
shit
the
got
drive
real.
home though?
Man, it was the most quietest ride ever. No.
I mean, because sometimes it could be, and then they wait until you go
Yeah, no,
inside the
I-
door.
Dad probably tied him up on the hood, homeboy.
Yeah. But man, I thought I was going to get my ass beat by my dad.
Yeah.
Like, you know, the one thing with my dad, I think it was like a tick or so, but like whenever his anxiety got in or his anger started building, he would bite his tongue. He would have his tongue sticking out just a little bit and he'd be biting it.
So you know he was
And
pissed.
he was like that. And, you know, my mom's always been the diffuser.
Yeah.
You know, my mom's the safety net.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And,
Talk to him, Mom. Talk to him.
Yeah, and I think in that moment in the vice principal's office, I think that was the first time I actually kind of opened up and said, "I'm afraid of you."
To
my dad.
Oh.
So I think that was like the intervention day, you know, for my true feelings to come out, and you know,
How
so-
did he react?
Dude, you probably caught him off guard.
I think I caught him off guard. You know, I was bawling crying. I thought I was going to get killed by my dad. Yeah.
I don't mean to laugh, bro, but I know exactly the feeling.
But honestly, that was like my first time getting caught. So my first time in trouble at school.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you
But
went
like,
all out
but-
for the first time.
Yeah,
If
it
you
was
didn't
a
do it-
big deal. That was a big deal.
So I got suspended for expulsion from it. Obviously, you know, and it was a week before finals, so all the preparation, I missed that whole week.
Wow.
And so there was school
So
board.
were you suspended that whole week,
I was
or
suspended
your
that whole entire
dad
week.
said your ass was locked in?
So I was suspended and grounded.
Yeah.
You know, so at home I was grounded. And of course my dad retired, so he's home.
He's it all day. You have a bodyguard.
I made sure to stay in my room.
With the door locked, bro.
Yeah. It was like, and that was the thing at the house, we weren't allowed to close the doors.
Oh.
And, oh man, I was like, fuck.
He's gonna walk in
It's
here
just me
any
and my
minute
dad.
now. Yeah.
Fuck. You know, but,
Right.
yeah, and so, but honestly, I think that was one of the moments that my dad was kind of backed off me, you know, and like kind of relaxed. Like, I think it kind of gave him that reality flash, like, oh, maybe I've been too hard on him.
Yeah, bro, probably.
You know, and like, honestly, I only got grounded for 3 days.
Right.
You
Wow.
know, out of
But, okay,
that 5-day suspension.
So did dad have a talk about that whole situation without putting hands on you? Did he ever say like
Never had no talks.
never? Okay.
Yeah, there was never any closure of anything. It was just
Gotcha.
forget and move on.
Yeah.
So it's like,
Just
you're not in
sweep it under
trouble,
the
so
rug.
don't bring it up.
Yeah, yeah. And so like after 3 days, on the third day of being suspended, you know, there's like there's school board hearings. The vice principal showed up. A couple of my teachers, and one of the security staff showed up on my behalf.
Where, to your how? Where?
To the school board hearings to see if they're going to expel me.
Oh.
So
Gotcha.
luckily, I didn't get expelled.
Oh, so yeah.
Yeah.
But if I failed the finals, obviously I'm gonna have to go back. So,
Gotcha.
But luckily, I only got suspended for a week.
Mm-hmm.
Did the finals, passed 11th grade.
Okay.
But yeah, it was kind of an eye opener.
Yeah.
And it was on my 12th grade year. I had to walk on pins and needles.
Right.
Because pretty much I couldn't play the baseball. I couldn't do anything. It was
So after that happened, were you doing actually better, or you were just better at covering your tracks?
I was a master at covering my tracks.
I figured. I mean, you don't just stop.
Yeah. Now it's like, how do I elevate myself? Because I'm having fun.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what I was enjoying life.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like, I was getting, I was hooking up my Volkswagen, making everything I own is always custom.
Yeah.
Like everything, even still today, but then
You got to put your
being
touch on
16, 17 years old, having, a custom vehicle and, I used to, for fun, me and my buddy would go to the junkyard just to work on cars.
Hook stuff off.
Yeah.
Right. Did you still have the job there, or did your parents ask you to stop working, or how'd that work out?
No, it was just, I worked for Safeway for, I think, a little bit after that, I got fired from Pack and Save.
Oh.
So
they found out you were robbing them?
No. No.
We're really short on the alcohol this week, bro.
Yeah. But I think they were trying to find a reason to fire. And so they fired me for going to my vehicle, and when I was supposed to be pushing the shopping carts, I went to my car and they're like, "Oh, you're wasting company time, you're fired."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Oh, what the hell do I do now?" I didn't even know how to explain to my parents.
Yeah.
And so I just went to Taco Bell, which was down the street, and got a job right away with Taco Bell.
Right.
And probably worst place I ever worked. But
But good experience though. Good experience.
It was a good experience. I got to, start talking through the mic. "Oh, thanks. Welcome to Taco Bell. How can I take your order?" But it was,
Dude. Yeah. You just gave me a memory I forgot about. But
but that's the thing. That's the purpose of these talks.
Yeah.
It's the reflection. It's all
bro.
that stuff.
That's kind of why I pulled out these specific questions, bro. I mean, we're gonna get deep.
Yeah.
Right. But I kind of want to massage us through there. Right. Just really quick, if you can just elaborate. You said you had a famous uncle who played baseball.
Yeah. So his name's Ernie Lombardi.
Lombardi. That's right.
So he started with the Oakland Oaks back in the 40s. He was like
Oakland what?
Oakland Oaks. So before.
Oh, really?
Before the Oakland A's came from Philadelphia to Oakland, there's the Oakland Oaks was like the hometown Major League Baseball team.
Oh shit!
Yeah,
but learned something new.
Yeah, or they called it the Pacific League. So
at that time.
Before MLB was ML.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was I think it was like San Francisco Seals and Oakland Oaks, and they actually played in Emerville at I think it's the Emerville Oaks Casino. That used to be their stadium.
Was that your dad's side or your mom's side?
My dad's side.
Oh, his brother?
No, so he married in, but he was married to my great aunt, so his aunt.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha.
Did
you have a relationship with him at all?
He died in 79, 80, right before
you were born.
or something like that. But then knowing about him, my dad would talk about it. My grandma, my dad's mom, I was close with her, and she was 100%. She would watch. She would have the TV on with the A's game on, while with the radio on. As she's keeping
she's
score.
One of those. Oh, she was keeping the score?
Yeah.
She's old school,
yeah,
bro.
And I have all the books.
No way.
I have everything.
That's cool.
All the programs, everything. And
that is awesome, bro.
Yeah, and so, from my grandma on my dad's side, that really got me rooted into the, baseball, and then learning a little bit about my uncle. And I was like, I want to be a catcher. Yeah. I want to be like my uncle, so he's a Hall of Famer. And it's like one of the main reasons why I go to the Oakland Stadium, when we're able to, because, where they have the big statues of the Hall of Famers, he's up on that wall.
No way,
so
bro.
cool.
And one of the suites was dedicated to him.
I gotta check that out next time.
Right on, brother.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted you to talk about that, man. I think that's really cool, bro.
Yeah.
Man, I think What's funny, bro, is when I was reading it's not funny. I think it's awesome, but it made me smile because from when I met you, I remember when I first met you, and then we had you. I played on the co-ed team with you when I first started really kind of talking to you. Mm-hmm. It's weird, bro, because I've always felt like some kind of connection between you and I can't explain it, bro. I can never explain it. Which led me to the reason why, like, I really kind of wanted to get to know you, right? Yeah. I always felt like, I don't know, bro. Like, you know, I don't know if you heard some of my podcasts, but I had a really horrible beginning too, right? A lot of people didn't know about it. I kept it under the rug for years, and the last 5-6 years, I just couldn't hold it no more, right? And it came out pretty nasty. But when I was going through my stuff, right, I could feel that there was something also wrong with you. There was something like some kind of weird connection. Yeah. But as I'm reading your book, when I was reading, I was like, damn, man, me and him have a lot of similarities, right? And just hearing you talk, like all the stupid stuff in high school, bro, it just, honestly, bro, when I was reading it, it made me smile because there's a lot of things, they were dumb things, but that's part of who we are. Yeah. You dig what I'm saying, bro? Yeah. And just to hear you talk about it right now, it's like, God damn, bro. Me and you have a lot more in common than we even realize. Right. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there, bro. I have one more question, right? And this to me, bro, like, so you joined the military, right? What was like, so just really quick, I had my son when he was 15 and I didn't have a father. So I wanted to have a special relationship with him because I really, in my head, when I was growing up, you know, the reason why all these things happened to me is because I didn't have a father, right? And I wanted to protect my son. I wanted to protect him from what happened to me, right? So I wanted to have a really solid relationship with him. So I had a decision after high school. I didn't know what to do, bro. I need to make money. I got to provide for him and his mom. And right away, I'm thinking military. But I started, like, I took the test for the Marines. I was ready to go take the real test, right? And something inside me told me, no. You need to talk to people. So I talked to a variety of people, but the one that stood out the most was my brother telling me, if you go, you're going to send you away for a long time. You're not really going to know your son, right? You're going to know him. You're going to have a relationship, but it's not going to be the way you want. You're not going to be here, right? He's still going to grow up in the hood, right? So it made me think a lot. So that was the ultimate factor when the recruiters kept calling me, like, oh, man, you know what, bro? Nah, man, I don't want to do it, bro. I can't do it. I got to be here with him. Right. And the area we lived in Logan Heights was rough, bro. Right. And the streets will gobble you up, especially if you don't have a father figure in the house. They'll swallow you up really quick, bro. Right. So I know your dad was in the military. Yeah. He did service. Was that a big factor of why you wanted to go? Or was it more like, nah, like I want to go because I want to? Right. Or was it because of the influence your father had because he went to the military?
Yeah. So. Kind of. Okay. So yeah. So pretty much, we got in a big ass fight one night, and it was, I came home smelling like weed. This is about 6 months after I graduated high school. Right. Still doing knucklehead stuff. Right. And pretty much I think because he was dying, he was still alive. Now this is going on 3 years, of him having cancer, or 2 years, like something like that, and. We had a big fight. And at the time, I was working for security out of Bayfair. So it was a mall over in San Leandro. Yeah. Just doing mall security. And I pretty much just got fired from doing undercover security.
Yeah, I read that in the book.
Yeah. Check out the book if you guys actually want to know what happened. So I went from undercover security to regular mall security. Yeah. And I think my dad just seen that I wasn't doing any good for myself. And
okay.
Yeah. And so we got in a big ass fight and argument, just yelling match. And the one thing that stuck in my head was, you ain't going to amount to shit. You're either going to end up dead or in jail. And I just kind of took a step back like, what? Watch me. Next day, I go to the mall and walking around and seeing the first recruiter I seen was the Army guy. Say, hey, I want to sign up. They're like, where you live? I told them, I live off Davis Street. And they're like, all right, cool. Come to Eastmont Mall. That's where Recruiter Station is. And so I signed up and left 10 days later just to prove a point.
Just like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that was the interesting part that my mom laughs at now.
Right.
Because I didn't even tell them that I signed up.
Okay.
So when did they find out?
The day the recruiter was coming to my house to pick me up to take me to San Jose to the MEP station.
That's
how they found out.
Did they tell you told them before they showed up, or they just found out when he showed up?
The recruiters called the house, was like, hey, I'm on my way to pick you up, so because we have to go to MEPS because there's like 2 trips to MEPS you have to do. But even at 18 years old, my parents were strict where you can't just dip out. We need to know where you're going,
who you're gonna be with,
all that stuff. And I never spent the night anywhere, And so, I was like, shit, I gotta tell my mom. I ain't gonna tell my dad. I gotta tell my mom. How am I gonna tell my mom? I gotta, I'm gonna, go spend the night in, MEPS, some hotel in San Jose, and get, So I pretty much told her, and she was out. I think she was at some Chinese restaurant getting food for the dinner for the night. Yeah. And I was like, hey, Mom. This time she had a cell phone. So this is 2000. She had one of those bigger phones. Yeah.
The brick.
Those bricks.
The bricks. And I was like, hey, so I have something to tell you. I have a recruiter coming here from the Army. He's going to take me to San Jose. Oh, Chief. You tell that son of a bitch he better sit his ass on the couch until I get there? And I was like, I don't think I can tell him that. He's a recruiter. So he shows up.
Oh, shit.
And I was like, hey, my mom wants to ask you a couple questions. So you have to wait for her to come back from the restaurant. So, that's how, and so of course.
That's how everybody.
Yeah. So, I did it out of, spite to prove a point.
Yeah.
That, you think I'm going to end up dead or in jail? Watch this.
Right.
You were in the Army. I'm going to do better than you in the Army.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But you think that fueled your first, that got you through the hard times in the Army? Like that?
That thought went out the process as soon as that drill sergeant come yelling in my face, like, beat your fucking face. My dad don't got shit. This dude don't got shit with my dad. Like, how many you want me to do?
Right. Exactly, bro.
Yeah. But at that point, I really felt that I had to prove myself. And like, I
so you took it as a challenge.
Oh, I took it as a challenge. And, but at the same time, I was teaching myself, not knowing I was learning to be a better man at that point.
Right.
And it changed my life. Like, literally, I was a pothead, in high school and out of high school and stuff like that. And once I went to the military, I stopped smoking weed. I started maturing. I start really thinking about stuff. It was, great experience.
All right. I got one more, bro. Unless you got one.
No, you go. We're just having a conversation.
Hey, so no, this is where I want to start getting kind of deep, bro. All right. Yeah. All right, man. So you're in the military, you're in the Army, and you happen to be signed up at one, I think, and at least for me, just my opinion, I think at one of the worst times possible. Right. What was it like when you're in the military and you see those 2 planes crashing into those buildings?
Yeah.
Right. Can you just quick scenario on how everything got alerted, everything was said, right? The shifting of the platoons, the kind of conversations that were going on. Like, what started running through your brain, knowing, damn, bro, we might be at fucking war, and I'm in the military.
Yeah. Right? So, obviously, I graduated base training, all that before 9/11.
Okay.
Just a couple months before.
Right.
And I get to my duty station.
2000 again, two?
Yeah, 2001. 2001. So I graduated, I want to say June.
Okay.
2001. I get to my first duty station over in Georgia.
Dude.
So
I got goosebumps already, dog.
I'm fresh meat. And I remember I was in a.
You were hot off the line, bro.
But then, like, my platoon sergeant, he actually put me in a class to help get my GT score. Just to get better education. So he was all about like, yeah, you're in the military, but I want you to do extra classes.
To advance you higher in the ranks, or just to get you more?
Yeah, just to, so that way I have better opportunities when I'm old,
Okay.
3 years from when my contract's up to renew it.
Gotcha.
So he was already prepping me and all
For
that.
your future, man.
Yeah. And so that was Sergeant Lugo. He was old school. He was a Puerto Rican with an attitude.
Okay.
We'll talk more about him later. But yeah,
I'm not sure if I met a Puerto Rican without an attitude. That might just be me.
True story, bro.
Yeah. But yeah, so I was in that class, and then so I didn't know shit that that the planes hit or any of that. One of my team leaders came at the time and pulled me out of the
Where were
class.
you stationed at the time?
Fort Stewart, Georgia.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my Sergeant Dixon, he pulls me out of the class and says, "Hey, we need to report to our platoon area."
Mm-hmm.
I was like, "All right, whatever." And he was like, "Yeah, we're under attack." I was like, "The fuck? Like, what does that mean?"
Right.
Are you fucking with me?
Yeah. And so we get back to the thing. Now, our unit, we're actually on rapid response. So if anything pops off in the world, we have 24 hours to dipping out.
Damn.
And so I'm like, I think I was like, shit, I just learned how to shoot the gun. Like, what?
What was your internal conversation?
But how old were you?
This was 18.
You were a baby,
yeah,
bro.
I was still 18 at the time.
Damn, okay.
Maybe 19, but yeah, it was young.
Wow.
And, so we get back to the platoon area and they're like, everyone pack up your rooms. Just in case you get that phone call, our rooms are already packed up. We got all of our,
So in my, I don't know, I've never been to the military, right? But in my brain, I imagine when they're saying this, there's sirens going off. There's, we got to hurry up and move, and there's whistles and all that.
No, it was
okay.
Military life is a little bit different from the movies.
Yeah, of course.
But there's some truth to the movies.
Yeah.
But it's like, I love the military.
Right.
With me being a smartass, I used to do a lot of push-ups. Because I would still talk shit while can't smoke a rock. But so we get that. I'm confused and stuff like that, and you got but you get all the masculinity of everything. And it's like, yeah, we're fucking going to war. Well, you get all the guys that are already been in there for like 2 years, and
right,
I
and then
want to go see some action.
And then you got the guys like me. We're like, the fuck's going on? So it was a mixed confusion. I was like, well, shit, and I think I had a cell phone at that point. And so I called my mom. I remember I made a phone call to my mom. I was like, yeah, I don't know what's really going on. There's a lot of confusion, but we may be leaving to possibly go to New York. We might be going somewhere.
So I can imagine your mom was panicked.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Was she crying? Like, was she nervous?
Not for that. Not for 9/11, I don't believe.
Well, for her son, for you.
Yeah, but
right?
I don't think because there was no plan of action of actually going anywhere.
Okay. She didn't know that you were going to be deployed at that time.
Yeah, not until a couple years later.
Oh,
but yeah, for 9/11, it was a lot of chaos. A lot of us just we had a little, like, I want to say a 13-inch TV in our little common area.
Yeah.
That's all of us huddling around like, oh, what's going on? Seeing the planes, seeing that there's so much news footage of that.
So as that's happening, you guys are watching that. Like, what was everybody like? You guys are all in the military, so if something's really going down, you guys have a really high opportunity of taking off.
Yeah,
like, was there any kind of conversation like, man, what the fuck, bro? We might have to go shoot some fools.
There was a lot of those conversations, and especially because we're infantry.
Yeah.
So that's our job is, we're going to be front line.
Yeah.
And so, but after 9/11, our mission for our unit changed where we were getting ready for war.
Wow.
So we pretty much knew something was, because of 9/11, we were now prepping to do war.
Even before they announced it.
Yeah.
You guys were already obviously prepping.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long from 9/11, how long was it until you were deployed in Iraq?
Yeah. So that, 9/11 happened. All of 2002, we were 100% training, doing multiple trips to Fort Irwin. So we're by Barstow, California, doing multiple trips there. They, doing pretty much, we train in the desert for a desert,
Right.
Yeah. but we used miles gear, which is like playing laser tag.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
but we had different, field things that we were doing in the field over at Fort Stewart, playing with the miles gear. And I always say playing with it because, playing laser tag. With like big boy guns.
Yeah.
But yeah, doing that. But that's where like the eye opener was, because I was at the time now a gunner, because at first I was a regular ground infantry guy. I was a part of the breach team. So like if there was like, Constantine wire, I was one to actually open that up and check for booby traps. And actually have to like cut the booby traps, all that stuff. That was when I first got in. That's what I was doing. Then I became a driver of the Bradley.
Okay.
And then I eventually, it was I want to say it was a fast pace, but then within a year I was a gunner, for the Bradley.
On top of the
I was on the top of the turret.
Dang.
And doing the main gun, and doing with the miles gear, it was crazy because it talks to you, and so like if when the lasers get hit, like you ever played laser tag?
Yeah,
you get the little vibration and stuff like. Yeah, with this it talks to you.
It tells you
like
where you're hit or
near miss. So you're like,
wow.
And so
you're experiencing.
So now you're like scanning, like where the hell is this invisible laser coming from? 'Cause, you see nothing, and then near miss, hit, kill. And then at that time, it shuts down the weapon system.
So you're out of the training.
Yeah, and you're just like,
Fuck.
and that was 2002 during Martin Focus. That's what we called our, where we actually fought our own division, so Fort Stewart against Fort Stewart.
Oh, okay.
So they divided the whole thing up. All the infantry divisions, all the medics, everything got separated, and we fought each other.
Wow,
all on days.
That's cool.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, that was where I really got the realization, like, oh shit,
bro,
like this is real.
This is real. Like I didn't even see that shit coming. And I was getting those warning signs.
Wow,
but those warning signs would be like you getting, hit,
shot at.
Yeah,
right.
Like it's hitting your vehicle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
dude.
so like,
and that you were on top as a gunner for that
so
game.
I'm inside of Bradley. So inside there's a turret.
Yeah.
And so I have a cover.
Oh, okay. You're standing up in there.
Yeah, it's the one that rotates, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And so I'm, turning it left, right, and shooting at the same time. Doing all that. And then I have the driver. But yeah, so that 2002 is when I really was like, oh, I need to master everything I do.
You started taking it serious.
Yeah.
Like,
and I think that's where I really became that perfectionist, where I really.
Oh, was your dad in your ear?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, now I understand what he was talking about.
Yeah.
It's like,
now you're in survival. And
And it's almost like I can't fuck up on anything in life. And especially that situation, I got other lives
that depend on you.
Depend on me.
Wow.
Just in my vehicle, overall, it's 9 guys, including me. And then I was a wing track. So which means I'm in front of the platoon sergeant's track.
Yeah.
So I have to protect their track, which is another 9 guys.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's 18 lives. I'm, potentially.
Man. So you started really going to town on what the responsibility was.
Yeah. So that was my mindset. And even though I'm a jokester, I'm a smart ass, and all that, but deep down, I actually care. I'm actually like a serious dude. And, I had that weight on me. Like I got a huge weight master on this, and it's like, I wasn't like the best gunner out there and like that, cause we had to qualify all that stuff. But yeah, I was good enough to be the gunner. Cause although there's guys that try to be a gunner, they got kicked off it because they suck. Yeah.
Right. Well, it takes a certain kind of,
Yeah. So that's where the training really amplified, and then knowing that we are going overseas.
And then so after 2002 and 2003, you were in Iraq, or was it?
Yeah. So that Christmas leave, so December 2002, we got to go home. We kind of already had a game plan of how we're invading Iraq.
So they already kind of briefed you guys on the plan. Mm-hmm. You obviously couldn't tell nobody, right? Was it like
technically, yeah?
Technically, you can't really tell nobody.
It was hush hush. But pretty much, if Turkey didn't pull out of their deal, the invasion that was drawn out to us before we went on Christmas leave would have been perfect. Like we knew exactly where we were going to go through Karbala Gap. We were going to take over the airport. Like we knew all that, back in like November, December of 2002.
Wow.
But then, that Christmas leave, that was a hard one because I knew I was leaving in January of 2003.
And then your mom knew?
So that Christmas was a little bit more touchier and stuff like that. But, it was like kind of avoiding the emotions, so,
You didn't want to stress them out or worry them too much.
And then, January 2003 comes, we get deployed middle of January, summertime. We go over to Kuwait, and I want to say by the beginning of February 2003, we actually sat in the middle of the desert waiting just to cross the border, and then for March when the war started.
Wow, bro.
Yeah.
And I think you, if I remember correctly, you said in the book, like within 20 minutes, you're just, like you get to Iraq, and within 20 minutes, there's just, once you go outside,
once we crossed the berm, once we crossed the border into Iraq, there's already, we already seen, a vehicle, dead body, all that stuff.
How was that? Like, because you went from training with toys, right?
Yeah.
To like, okay, it's reality right now.
Yeah, that night before, I think that's when reality really hit. It was like, because it was fun games when we were over in Kuwait.
Right.
We were playing with lizards. We were, running after the little, bugs and all that stuff, burying each other in the sand.
Just being kids, bro.
Yeah,
being kids.
That's all we were.
Yeah.
And then when we actually set up on the border, and that night before, right before Bush said, we declare war, his little speech thing, we had field artillery right behind us shooting the missiles. And the concussion from that just boom, boom, boom. And you're seeing the missiles flying, and you're just like,
that's the night before.
This is the night before.
So you didn't sleep the night before?
Nah, I don't know where. So the adrenaline.
Right.
Yeah. And then, I had my camcorder with me. And so I recorded a whole bunch of different, bits and pieces throughout the whole experience.
How were those conversations with your...
So, and so like
fellow...
me and my driver that I had, Atwell, we would go around, we were pretending to be the news, Rock 3 News. That was us.
Rock 3 News.
Yeah. And so we would go interview. We were going around interviewing. Hey, so what's up? How you doing? You got any final words?
Final words.
Just doing that. And then we had like other guys doing interviews. Man, shit's going crazy over here. We got these guys blasting off. Blah blah. We're making light out of it.
Yeah.
But deep down, we're just like, this is real. Ooh. Those missiles are actually going. Those aren't just blanks. Those are actual real missiles.
All right, hold on, bro. Jeez. You got me. I have to ask this question.
Yeah.
So I'm sure at some point, like one of the captains had to give you guys a motivational speech about the realization of what's about to happen.
Yeah.
Did you ever have that?
Yeah, Luke.
Can you just brief us real quick on what was kind of said and how it made you feel?
I can't remember his words, but yes.
Did it feel like a Lombardi speech almost?
Yeah, so Lieutenant Colonel Rudder, he was the man. Him and Captain Kelly, those two guys, if they hit me up today to say, hey, I have an issue, come follow me. Yeah. Yes, I will go and follow them even still today.
Right on, bro.
Guaranteed.
That's huge.
Yeah. And, I haven't seen them in 20 years. We're all old as hell. They're even older.
Yeah.
But it's like, their leadership, their, everything, and just anything they could have just said, any off the wall thing.
Yeah.
And we would just be like, yeah.
Oh, they're one of those, bro.
Yeah.
Like, you run through a wall for them.
Yeah.
Right
like
on.
They led by them doing.
Right. Okay.
Definitely he gave the little rah-rah speech.
So can you walk me through one of the most intense or meaningful experiences you had during your service? Like, what was the one that, like, you probably don't want to think about sometimes?
Yeah.
Right?
So there's two incidents. March 23rd, 2003. That was the first time I had actually killed somebody.
Okay.
We're going up, and it's crazy because, like, every once in a while on the internet, I actually see that road. Like, picture stills of like our vehicles going up this hill. And that was March 20th. So 3 days in was the first time I actually
3 days in. Wow.
Yeah. And that's when I actually got to pull the trigger.
Wow.
Man, I hesitated because it was 3 dudes shooting with AKs. And I'm in this Bradley,
fully
protected with armor.
Yeah.
And I'm like, my Sergeant Lugo was like, shoot. I'm like, but why?
Oh, man.
I question it.
Yeah.
I hesitated. I'm like, that's damn near like throwing a rock at a wall.
What they're doing.
Yeah. I was like, it ain't doing nothing. And so I was like, all right. So, it's like, so when you're in there, you have the
like goggles?
The goggle type thing for the eyesight. And then your hands are down here. And then your selector switch for the different ammo is way over here. So you're, everything's by feel, but it's muscle memory by now.
Yeah, right.
Well, I was nervous.
Yeah.
I went to hit 7.62, which would be just like a regular, ammo.
Yeah.
Well, now I hit high explosive round, which is the 25 millimeter.
Oh.
So I was supposed to shoot him with something that thick, but I actually shot him with something,
all three of them? Or just
I only shot one. It only takes one guy to die, and the other two gave up.
Yeah. Oh,
wow.
wow.
But I remember there was a berm. They were popping up like the
like chipmunks.
That little game where that's what it looked like because they're popping up,
shoot,
and
then go to.
And then so as soon as that one popped up, I shot, and he fell, and the other two went, "We're good."
Oh, really?
So yeah, March 23rd. That day stands out because that was the first time ever killing somebody.
How did you feel at that moment when you realized?
Like right before you pulled that trigger, how do you what are your?
It couldn't go. It was almost like
No, but after you actually did it, right before you.
That's all.
Did you just go on auto, or you actually think?
I think because the other two gave up, I was thankful.
Oh.
I think I was thankful. Like, okay, I got it. For one, I got it out of my system.
Yeah, because you're gonna have to eventually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the other one that really stuck out was I think it was April 2nd, the day before we took over the airport. We got ambushed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so with that, we got ambushed. That it was about 5.5 hours of straight constant fighting.
Wow.
The RPGs were coming
So
at
like
us.
a year, huh?
Yeah, and it was just nonstop. Just spraying down dudes. And they were using cows to as coverage to try to get closer to us.
Yeah.
And at that point, I just remember just blasting. It was one big open field.
Yeah.
I'm just
sweeping them.
And thankfully to my driver Atwell, he had his night vision that he would drive with, but he would position the vehicle to be a look at my spot.
Oh, make it easier for you.
Yeah, and like he was looking for the RPG teams, and he was spotting different RPGs. He's like, "Hey, over there," and so I'll be like, "Where?" He's like, "Over there." So like I'd shoot one round. He'd be like, "No, a little bit more to the left, a little bit more to the right."
So it's all communication.
And so like and then finally I'll be like, "Oh, I see him." Da 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 da. But 5 hours of constant fighting.
Wow,
and like
bro.
and I really feel that was like I think that's where like my PTSD trauma really kicked in because I remember this cold chill that came over me.
Scared.
And I just start busting up laughing while I'm shooting.
Yeah, I was gonna tell you.
Yeah.
You wrote that like you were so nervous and so stressed that you just started laughing.
I just start laughing. Just this dude wants to hide behind a cow. Not a problem. Blow the cow up. But yeah, I would say those are the two.
Right.
2 items that really stood out in the military that like definitely sticks with me.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how do you get past that when it sticks with you, bro? Is there any kind of like meditation that you work on that they've taught you how to work on with?
Nowadays, meditation, trying to, thinking positive. It's all about mindfulness. Straight out of the military, isolation.
Okay.
So totally, before or after, it was isolation, just, I don't know what's wrong with me.
Right.
But and then not knowing anybody you can actually speak to because, you can't just go up to anybody like, oh, how it feels to kill somebody.
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard, bro.
Yeah. And, to actually,
connect with someone.
Yeah.
So there was a part in the book where you said I forgot what it was, but your job at that location was to go stand guard. And you were standing guard next to like dead bodies.
To George, yeah.
Where was it at?
Yeah, so as right after we got done with the Saddam International Airport, which is now the Baghdad International Airport, we left that area and we went to this. It's called their government thing was the bath party, and so we took over or we took residence in their little compound,
right?
Just to give us shelter. And our our little platoon, we actually got the pool house.
Oh,
So
right.
that was our R&R. Like, we just did
Cooked
this.
some barbecue there, you said, right?
We were first time seeing a toilet, because obviously we're in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
Right.
A sink, like all amenities. Like we were just like, wow. But their buildings are so beautiful. Everything's marble, ceiling to floor to ceiling.
Right.
It was so beautiful. And then on top they had a pool.
Right.
With a retractable roof. So, we were living the life, after all that.
Yeah.
We thought we made it. We're like, shit, we good. But
Can we stay here, bro?
yeah. But, it was like we did have a pool guard on road guard. So we had pretty much control if any vehicles or anything come, either stop them, shoot them, just, hey, turn around. And like a lot of times it was just, ishta,
Right.
which like leave, just to go, get away from here. But for some reason, where we had to do it, there was a dead dude right there, and we were chilling with him for like 2 weeks. And of course, his name was George. But just
So when you run across a corpse like that, like you don't do anything with it?
we personally didn't, but we would make the calls for the medics or whoever's supposed
So
to
there's
pick
somebody
it up.
comes behind.
So,
And,
but I think they were backlogged on.
right. Yeah.
But
Might have been a
I
little
don't mean to
busy.
laugh, but
So, I didn't even think about it, but I mean, obviously, you guys are focusing on
So-
staying alive, so
Yeah.
that is
that's
an
irrelevant.
afterthought.
Yeah, and so it was like we questioned it too, like why can't we just go up the road just a little bit more?
So I have a friend who's still in the military, but I remember I talked to him. He joined a year before I was going to join, and he was a big influence on why I wanted to join because he was kind of like my big brother, right? But I talked to him maybe 10 years after, and he seen some action too, and he said like the hardest part for him was like the friends he lost,
Yeah.
right? Did you lose any close friends inside there?
Yeah, so there's a couple guys, being back on base, there's your drinking buddies.
Right.
You had some really close dudes and then guys that you ran across.
Yeah.
And our first deployment there, back in their initial thing, no one in my actual platoon got hurt, thankfully.
Oh, wow.
Like we all survived. But we did have, one guy, he got sniped, by being outside of his tank,
Oh, man.
at one of the positions we were at.
Yeah.
And, coming back to there and you're just like, they're saying, Specialist Saunders is dead. And you're like, what?
Wow.
Like he was just in the vehicle right there. Like, what do you mean? I just went to the maintenance yard or maintenance department to go get some night vision lights fixed and some other stuff. But where we were, there was, I guess, a building or whatever.
Sniper was there.
And then of course, they took care of him. But it's like the little things, there's a lot of guys died, some of them were just vehicle accidents. Just because they ran off the ditch.
The cliff. Right.
Was that common?
That was like our first deployment for like our immediate, unit. Yeah, it was, I think there was like 4 or 5 guys that did that. Now we did have 5 guys that were doing a road guard, and one of the taxis came up and it was a car bomb.
Oh, man.
And so we lost 5 guys, because of
right
that.
there.
Yeah. So it was, and it's being broadcast over the radio.
Oh,
So you're hearing,
as it
that's
happened.
happening. Like, hey, these guys, we just lost 5 over an Alpha company. We just lost 1 in Bravo.
Right.
And you're just like, oh shit, this is real.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, it's crazy, and when I got out that same year that I was over in Iraq.
Yeah.
I got back in September. I was out by December. But then my guys that I was with went back in 2005. And
They
that's
stayed in, or they
Yeah.
got out and went back in?
No, so they were, still within their contracts,
okay.
all that stuff. And their rotation, it was just our unit. Their next one was in 2005, and that's when our unit got like messed up. That's where I lost a lot of my buddies.
Yeah.
Where after I got in the military, they stayed in, and that's when they lost limbs, died, everything. It was like our unit was, or our platoon got hit hard.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you spend the total time over there, how long then?
So I was over in I was deployed for 9 months.
Wow.
Yeah, and we were only meant to be there just to take over, just to gain access to get control of the country, and then leave.
Okay.
So what was the name of your mission? Was there a name of the mission?
So there's
or
different
your objective.
Yeah, so we had different objectives. Our mission, is I can't remember some of the first ones, but then it was like Operation Lions, Operation Peach, Saints. So there's different things that
along the way.
Yeah. So like our first one was take over some little airport. Our second goal was take over the Kabbalah Gap. After that, cross the Euphrates. I think it was Lion.
How many of you were in that platoon, that group that was doing that?
So our unit, I think it was like 144 just in our little task force that we have.
Gotcha.
And you move at the same
together.
time?
Yeah. So it was like, with us being infantry, we were attached to a tanker unit as their protection. Obviously, you need your big guns to go as far as you can. So here you are, the infantry guys, to protect
in the front.
Yeah,
right.
And so our platoon was to protect the company.
Right.
So yeah, it was. We knew our task. Like we're to, at all costs protect the tanks.
Right.
So, but it's
awesome, bro. Fuck, man, that's pretty crazy, brother. So you, on part of the book, or part where you said you left after 3 years. You had a decision whether if you wanted to continue or to leave, and you were ready to say, I'm done with this. I'm leaving.
Not at all.
Oh, you weren't?
I think you came back because of your dad, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So so pretty much at the time, I already experienced everything.
Yeah.
I was still in Iraq, and my re-enlistment option came up. One of my great friends at the time, Agnetti, he came up to me. He's like, "Hey, let's re-enlist. We can go to Germany. If we re-enlist here in Iraq, it's a tax-free bonus. So we didn't have to pay taxes on the bonus, the sign-on bonus.
Yeah.
But then being able to talk to my parents a little bit, my dad's health was going bad.
It was going down.
So this is what at this time, like 5 years of him having cancer or something like that.
Wow.
He's losing weight. He's using a walker. So I'm like, nah, I can't do it. I need to reestablish that relationship with my dad. I need to rekindle it. And so I'm coming back as a different man. And then the one thing I think that made that more possible, and this is where I say, my dad said, "I love you" one time to me.
Yeah, I remember you saying that in the book.
In a letter, he signed it, "Love, Dad." I took that as he said, "I love you."
100%, bro.
Yeah. And so I think that.
You still have that letter?
Oh, yeah, I got all the letters.
Right.
Yeah. And so that I want it to continue. I was not really thinking of going to Germany, but I actually wanted to, go to Ranger school.
Oh.
I actually wanted, I feel if we didn't have to get deployed, I would have probably went that route.
Right.
Like Rangers and stuff like that. Because I enjoyed that competition. It was great. We'd do the rucksack races and stuff like that. I liked it.
Right.
And it was like all the officers had to be Rangers.
Right.
To be infantry officer in infantry, you had to be a Ranger.
Wow.
So it was one of those things like, I want to do that. Because a lot of guys either do Green Beret or Ranger from.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So after you make that decision, right? Come back and stay for your dad instead of continuing. You come back home. How was it to kind of be reintroduced to quote unquote normal life, right? How did you handle that? How was it?
Yeah.
And what was the most surprising part about it?
Yeah. So I thought I was adjusting well.
Okay. From your perspective.
My perspective, I thought I was adjusting well. I felt lost because everything was orderly. Everything, we knew exactly what to do, how to do it. But I was bored. I just came back from the highest adrenaline rush you can ever imagine.
Yeah.
It was like, I just got back so this is 3 months later. Now I'm just like staring at the walls like, what do we do? I got no purpose anymore.
Yeah.
And so I got it, and I was like, okay, I'm not sitting on unemployment. So I got a job at Terminex, like instantly. I think I probably waited a month before I was like, I'm getting a job.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I thought everything was good, but then, you know, I was starting to get those, you know, the car backfire. And I would be like, oh, what the fuck?
Oh, it would spook you? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
But I tried to play it off like,
Mhm.
you know, I didn't know, you know, it did. So this now is getting into like 2004. And then my buddy, Jesus, he got out of the Marines in 2004, 2005. And he went through like, the Marines actually set him up better, in my opinion, on the out processing.
Oh, okay.
You know, of what to do, how to
Exiting.
do stuff. Yeah, the exiting stuff. And so, you know, he was the one that was like, I think there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm good. What are you talking about? You know, he was like, no, why don't you come see, you know, my counselor over at the vet center in Oakland. And I was like, what the hell is a vet center?
Oh, you didn't even know about that?
I didn't know nothing. I didn't know about the VA. I didn't know nothing. I thought I was all the military.
Wow.
I thought I just entered a job
Yeah.
and I just go
You were
do
done with your
whatever.
job.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I didn't know about any support, anything. And, you know, my buddy Jesus was like, no, you need to do this, you know. So I go and, you know, I sit down with a counselor. Now, this would be the first time ever talking to a counselor, therapist, anything.
Right.
And so I didn't know what to expect. And that's when I started learning, like, oh, there is something wrong with me? What the hell is this PTSD?
Mm.
Like, I'd never heard of PTSD.
Yeah.
You know, so it was now I'm in a foreign country of my own, you know, within my own head.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, so it was like, you know, for that, you know, it was like,
Damn, hold on. That was a bar right there, bro.
Yeah.
I'm in a foreign country inside my own head.
Yeah.
Damn, bro. I relate to that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And, you know, so I give thanks to my buddy Jesus because he shined a light on that. Like, you know, if it wasn't for him,
It brought you
in
some
the Marines,
awareness.
yeah. And it's like, as much as I talk
talk-
mess about the Marines, but if it wasn't for him in the Marines and the out processing,
Yeah.
you know,
You would have went on.
I
freaking
I don't know where I would be today.
wow,
you know.
bro.
And then he was dealing with his own thing.
Yeah.
You know, and he eventually went back to the Marines because once you get out of the military,
Yeah.
as much as you can't wait to get out of the military, once you're out, you wish you would be back in.
Right.
You go through like a withdrawal.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it's crazy.
Did you
And-
experience that too?
Yeah.
A withdrawal?
Yeah, but at the same time, I was like, me and my dad's relationship is getting better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So that was more fulfilling, is to have a better relationship with your dad.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, and so it was like I knew I was doing the right thing,
Right.
you know. And my dad, my dad never talked, never, you know, his emotions,
Yeah.
nothing. But I remember it was one day he just randomly gave me a season pass for Great America.
Yeah.
I was like, what the hell? I was like, what's this for? He was like, take it.
Oh. Really?
You know, and that was after I got out of the military, and it was like, that's cool.
Yeah.
You know, but
Wow.
that was his
other way of telling you he loves you.
Yeah. He was proud of me. Everything was that gift or that season pass to Great America.
So let's rewind real quick. When you got home from the military, right? You surprised your mother and your father with that award.
yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So
Can you elaborate on that real quick?
yeah, so pretty much being overseas, you actually have a lot of time. So I read the contract that nobody ever reads.
Yeah.
You know, and so I found out that you can get a school drop. So I was supposed to get out of the military March or February of 2004, but I took a school drop option. So I got out for my Christmas leave. So I got out 2 months earlier than the contract.
Okay.
But I was like, why am I going to go home, come back just to get back?
Yeah.
But I think it kind of screwed me because by shortening that part, I missed those opportunities of those all the classes I was supposed to do to exit out of the Army.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You know, because not everybody was back. Not everybody was back, you know, in our unit.
Right.
So you know, it was great to get out 2 months early, but I think that was the crucial part that I missed.
Yeah.
That's why I was clueless.
Right.
You know,
Right.
But yeah, so I get home and my parents just think I'm on the Christmas leave, you know,
Right.
for the 2 weeks. But I already had my discharge paper, all that stuff. I wrapped it up in a nice frame and all that and put it on the Christmas tree. And every Christmas, you know, we sit around the tree, you know, and, we go around opening up the presents, and then, I left that one out there for my parents, and my parents, they allowed me and my sister to open up presents first, and then they got their 2 presents. Right?
They open 20 of them. And
they wait the hour before they can open up their 1 or 2 presents. Yeah. So I made sure they opened up my sister's present first.
Right.
And then they opened up mine. And so, of course, my dad's sitting there like, my mom's the one opening up the present. And he's just, what is this in the underwear? He's in his little tidy whities with his coffee. Like, so they open it up. And my mom was like, oh, this is cool. And it's my discharge paper saying, my honorable discharge, all that. I have it all nice framed. Mom was like, oh, this is cute. Not really connecting dots, but my dad knows.
Yeah.
Because he already did. And he was like, how did you get this already? You don't get this until you're out.
Right.
I'm like, well, surprise.
That was,
I'm out.
Yeah. And so that's how I told him. I was like, hey, I'm out. And so, of course, emotions and all that stuff. Mom was like, oh my gosh, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, I'm home. Like, I'm safe.
I'm not leaving.
I'm back. I'm home.
Right.
Not just back in Georgia.
I'm back.
Wow, bro.
Yeah. So that was a great moment.
But I think you would say that's when the battle really begun for you.
That was a silent battle.
Yeah, that was a silent battle.
Yeah.
Right?
That's when the next war started.
Yeah, that's the one that lingered for a while, right?
Yeah. Yep.
All right, man. Let's get into that, bro.
Yeah.
So you met a girl, right? And simultaneously you guys had some fun, right? But this girl obviously knew you were having issues, right? With your PTSD.
Yeah.
Right? How did having her help you with it?
Yeah. So she helped. Okay. So
whatever kind of token she gave you.
So with her, I was with her when I got diagnosed through the vet center about the PTSD. The great thing about her, she was very supportive.
Yeah.
She was there. I think it was a blessing and a curse that she knew too much, because if the fireworks went off or a car backfired, she instantly, are you okay?
Oh.
So sometimes I may not have paid attention that it happened. Well, now she triggered it.
Oh.
Right. So
by trying to be
supportive, being that great woman that she was.
Yeah.
Right? It was kind of a downfall. And
it was good and bad simultaneously, bro.
Yeah. Yes. But like, bless her heart for actually, she was doing the right thing.
Yeah. Yeah. She didn't know.
As someone that loves you and everything else, she was there, but I still remember because I was with her. We're at my cousin's house in Oakley when this happened. And like, I remember the fireworks going off, because especially,
4th of July.
Everyone's doing fireworks in the neighborhoods and all that stuff. And I froze in the middle of the street.
How long after the military was this?
I want to say like a year or 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's short.
And I remember I just froze in the middle of the street. And, I remember my girlfriend at the time, she was like, what's wrong? I don't know.
Oh, wow. Bro.
Yeah. And my cousin-in-law, he took me on a walk, kind of distracted me to, but yeah, that's where I was really noticing that. Yeah, someone's actually.
Did your family and friend, did you ever tell them the extent of what you experienced, so they knew?
No.
So you kind of kept it hidden.
Yeah.
Right? They really didn't know all of it.
I had the mindset nobody's going to understand you.
Right.
Well, so you even write, right? You write that you about pushing your mom away when you needed her the most, which was around this time, right?
Yeah. So even when we were getting deployed back from Iraq, she was all excited for the homecoming.
Right.
And I was like, nah, I don't want you to be
right.
Here. And I put that in there. And, and then I knew that was the wrong thing to do to my mom.
Yeah.
And I remember she broke down crying on the phone. And I was like, I wasn't ready. When I got back home, when we did the homecoming, we're on the parade field. I want to say it was late. It was maybe midnight. I don't know. It was nighttime. And it was like the loneliest walk I could ever imagine. Everyone running to their family, and I'm taking my little walk down Golick Avenue back to my barracks room
All by yourself.
all by myself, and I was crying.
Oh,
Yeah.
I bet, bro. Damn, man. That's tough, dude.
Yeah.
How do you think of that? How do you think of that situation now, pushing your mom away, and now looking back, like how do you deal with those feelings?
I kind of, I still try to avoid it a little bit because I feel like I did do wrong. I do try to make a joke out of it by telling my mom that she saved money by she didn't have to take a plane flight.
Right.
You know, but
Yeah.
Mom don't give two
Yeah.
shits.
Yeah.
She wanted to be there, and I think I stole that from my mom.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of those are little regrets that I have in life.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
definitely.
100%.
My mom knew that was the right thing to be, is to be there.
Yeah.
And for her to listen to me and actually listen to me. and not
Respect
come.
what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
That was huge of her.
Yeah. And
Even though you might have needed something different, she
Yeah.
was doing what you were asking.
yeah, but me not telling her something's not right with me. I knew this back in Iraq. I felt like I wasn't ready to see them.
Right.
And so obviously it stemmed, obviously looking back, there was something going on even when I was still in Iraq
Right.
to push her away.
Yeah.
But not really noticing. But how do you explain? I don't know what it is.
Right.
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 you know,
Right.
but just don't come.
You don't know how to describe it, so how do
Yeah.
you say it?
Right.
So ultimately, you would say that it obviously, I mean, I think war, battle, stuff like that changes a man.
Yeah.
Right. The
Yeah.
way he thinks, the way he looks at life, the way he communicates, right? His responses to everything, right? I mean, I always thought with my PTSD that I recently understood, right? Like there would be certain ways people would touch me and it would freak me out. And I never understood why,
Yeah.
right? There would be certain ways people would talk to me, right? And it would freak me out.
Yeah.
But instead of getting scared, I turned it and started getting very upset, in which I started to develop anger, right? When you talked to a counselor or a psychologist or whoever you talk, psychiatrist, when you really started to understand what you had, right? How did that make you feel? Because because just for me, it felt like, well, I'm not crazy, bro. Like this is actually like there's millions of men who have been molested that feel the same way I feel.
Yeah.
Right. And for so long we hid it and we pretend like there was nothing there. But when I started talking to them and they started telling me the evidence and the amount of men and the amount of people and what happens and what you experience, and it was like, damn, I felt like a huge weight come off of my shoulder. Right. I didn't feel alone anymore. I felt like, okay, I'm not the only one. Right. Because, if that happens to you, you don't tell no one about it because I had no one I could trust, no one that I feel like I can be protected by, right? Mm-hmm. So when I was first understood it, I was like, fuck, dude, I'm not alone, right? I'm not the only one this happened to, right? So I felt like a huge amount of just pressure, right? I mean, I still deal with my issues, but they're not as bad as they used to be, right?
Yeah.
And for me, I turned to drugs, I turned to alcohol to help just what I thought was helping me, but eventually in the long run, it made me worse. It got so bad to the point where I almost killed myself because of it, right? How did you feel when you first really understood that you had that problem?
Yeah, so pretty much I just learned that all the years of therapy. So from 2005 on, I was getting treatment and therapy and counseling for PTSD. I was thinking I was being truthful
to
the counselor.
Yeah.
I was saying just enough to get shit off my chest, but still keep all the demons inside.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just enough to kind of feel better.
Yeah.
And I just learned.
Like a purge valve.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, exactly. And I was learning coping mechanisms. I was learning the tools.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, oh, I can learn this and it's working and I don't actually have to say shit.
Yeah. I don't have to come here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So all this time that's what I was doing. And then I'm like, oh, these tools aren't working anymore. Let me go back to see the therapist again.
Yeah.
Let me, let off some more little steam, let a little bit more out. They'll give me another little tool to work on. And, at one point they did try Zoloft and another one. But those actually gave me suicidal ideation.
Yeah.
And so I took myself, I've always been anti-pills.
Yeah.
And my second relationship that it was actually causing sexual issues because of personal things. Taking those type of pills sometimes it doesn't allow you to ejaculate or anything like that. And so now, are you cheating?
Yeah.
Or am I not good enough?
How come you're not excited?
Right. Yeah. And so another reason to get off the pill, not get off.
Yeah. Right. No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Well, we'll put a drug here.
Yeah. But, so that was causing issues within that relationship. And so that was just another reason to get off the pills, from that. But, learning, I know we'll get into that a little bit.
Yeah.
But what I learned was I wasted my time in therapy by only giving little bits just to ease and tell the therapist what they
wanted to hear.
Yes. So I wasted all this time just to mask myself. So.
But at some point, because the way you worded it was like, I thought I was being truthful, which the way I'm hearing it is that you were not aware, or were you aware and you were purposely holding back?
I think a little bit of both. Like it was making me feel good enough for what I was saying. So I felt
I can back off now.
Therapy is working because I can say just enough and I was good.
But have you also come to understand it better what you know now? Like, okay, well, there's really more than I even thought.
Yeah. Like
as you're healing and whatnot.
Yeah, definitely. There was a later time that 100%.
Because that happens, I'm lucky enough that I don't have, the trauma of being in war and stuff that you've been through. But, we all have our own traumas. And sometimes, like when I'm talking to my brother, because we grew up together, and he'll bring up something. And then in a conversation, we're not even talking about like the trauma. We're just talking about like life back in the day. He'll bring something up and then all of a sudden it clicks. That's what was bothering me. So it's not even the story is the same, but it's like this whole time I thought this thing is what caused me the trauma, but it's so much deeper as this. And you just get that realization and you're like, oh, okay. And then because at least it happens to me, is like sometimes I have an idea was my trauma, but until you just kind of get it, then is when you can actually work on it because, we're not experts on it, right? Even though it's been done to us, we don't know how to heal. You learn on the go.
So I want to rewind real quick. He just reminded me. There was a part earlier in the book, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you always like to be the funny guy with the smile and making people happy around you, right?
Yeah.
Well, what part of that was in the book? When you were younger? There was a part throughout your life.
Yeah, no, it was funny. So I remember going to Disneyland. Like I used, once we get into like LA, my dad would be like, "Don't look out the windows." Yeah. Like LA, freeways are the worst thing.
Yeah.
Right.
But I used to back then it was a Nickelodeon slime. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Yeah.
So I used to put that on my nose like it was a booger, and
people were looking at you,
looking out the window, like,
But even when you were in Kauai, right? Like you were pretending to be a news cameraman, like that's trying to be the funny person.
I always, as much of an introvert I am, I'm always able to put myself out there. Like it's
weird.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. It's like, and obviously the older I get, the more of an introvert I'm becoming.
Yeah.
Because I think I'm just have too much mindfulness going on that I'm just like doubting myself, like, which way do I go? But yeah, I've always been trying to be the funny guy. I think it's just trying to mask the hurt, the pain, all that stuff.
So that was my question. So you were doing that because internally for yourself, the amount of your relationship with your dad and the words he used and how he used them, Would you say that he made you very insecure with a lot of things growing up?
Yeah, and I think so. And then knowing that, learning about it, of, trying to chase that validation, that acceptance from other people. So if I was the funny guy, you start laughing, well, I just won.
So
it was chasing that validation from just anybody. So I found it's the easiest way to get the validation is make people laugh, be funny.
And that's when I read that part in the book, it made me smile because I was the same way, bro, growing up, right? Like what I went through, I never told anyone, but I knew what being sad felt like because I was left at home a lot by myself, right? So I had to really like figure out a way to entertain myself when I would feel and see these negative things and be reminded of these negative things, right? I got to the point where I would tell my mom, I don't want to go to the house. I would beg her, please, I don't want to go to the house. I'll do anything, My mom didn't believe me, right? And, my mom was a single parent, right? She was doing the best she could to survive. Her main focus was making sure we had a house and we had some food, right? Obviously, a lot of her parenting skills and stuff like that I don't agree with, but she did the best she could. Right now that I'm older and I look back and I understand, well, she had a shitty situation and she did the best she could.
Right.
I forgave her a long time ago. But when you said that, bro, it made me smile in my heart because I think a lot of the people who go through that, at least from my point of view, my perspective, talking to other people who've been damaged, right, or who had some PTSD, I think we're some of the people with the biggest hearts because we know what that fucking shitty side feels like, right? And I don't want to see the people around me like that. So naturally, I became a cheerleader for everyone. But sometimes we forget to be a cheerleader for ourselves, right? We forget to motivate ourselves or to dig ourselves out of that hole. Because we put on such a great facade, people don't realize that I'm dying inside. I wish I could tell you. I just didn't know how to tell people, right?
So when people don't even think to ask because you're the
cheerleader,
party,
bro, right?
So this guy is his life is perfect, and
it's even like Facebook pictures. It's like, oh, you look so happy in your photos.
Well, because exactly,
right, What am I supposed to do? Cry?
There's a commercial. I think it's on Instagram that I popped a few times for me. I'm sure you guys seen it. There's two guys. I don't know if it's a soccer game or a baseball game, and they're two friends, and they're constantly going there. And one of them's kind of like an introvert, kind of down. The other one's just like raw.
Yeah.
And so the whole time that you're watching this commercial is a commercial about mental health for men.
Yeah.
Your thinking is the introvert, the guy that's kind of normally down, that's the guy that needs to go. And all of a sudden, the other guy, the happy guy, is not in the picture no more. So that, and basically is telling the story that you're trying to say is that, you don't know what's behind that smile.
100%.
Yep.
And we have a very bad culture as men of asking, right? Asking like, hey, how you doing? And it's tough to ask, but it's also tough to be asked that, right? Because what happens is like, okay, well, maybe you have the friend to ask you that, but if you're not used to also being honest, then, that's something that has to change because we're all going through different things.
100%.
So we know how
100%.
hard it is to be a human, to be a man, to be a father, to be a business owner like you guys. And so asking those questions of your fellow men or your friends, though, that is super important because you don't know. And, like your friend that took you to the bed for the first time to talk to the counselor, like that was him reaching out and saying, are you okay?
Or something's not okay. I see.
Right. And I think, it's tough, right? Because we have this culture, men culture of like respect, which we should have and I believe in. And sometimes you don't want to cross that line, right? You respect this person and you want to stay respectful and not get in people's business. But I think sometimes you have to, obviously it depends on the relationship you have, but you have to step a little if you care, because if you're friends, if you're family, if you really care, then you have to step a little bit sometimes. Right. And it's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable to ask a person because it might be nothing, right?
Right.
But,
No, 100%.
but it could be that you saved their life.
Right. So I remember, there was one time where, where I know that something was going on with your life, right? And I don't know if you remember this day, I was like something in my heart, bro, was pulling at me, bro.
Yeah.
And now that I'm very, I'm a lot closer to God now. I walk with him every day. I talk to him every day. I understand that was God inside me telling me, you got to go reach out. We got to reach out to him. There's something not right. There's something going on with this guy.
And that day you seen it.
Yeah.
You seen it.
I seen it, bro.
Yeah.
And I remember, bro, like I meant to tell you this a while ago, but when I walked in there, bro, I felt pain. I felt sadness, bro. Right? I felt, honestly, that what I felt when I walked into your house is what I felt walking into where I used to live as a child. Right? I hated staying home alone because my brain would just go crazy with all the things that I would see next door, all the gunshots, the violence, watching people get stabbed, killed, murdered, tortured. Right. And being fucking 5, 6, 7, 8 years old, spending many times by yourself in the house from sun up to sun all the way down. You wake up, your mom was there, but she leaves food on the table for you and that's it. Don't fucking open the door. Don't call nobody. Don't watch TV and all that. But there was a feeling, man, that every time I would walk into my house, I felt very eerie, very sad, just poison, bro. And when I walked into your house that day, I fucking felt it right away. And then when I made eye contact with you, like sitting at the table,
I just broke down.
You broke down, bro.
I broke down.
And I was holding my tears back, bro, but I wanted to cry so bad with you, dude. I wanted to hug you so bad. But I felt in my heart I needed to tell you, bro, like, this isn't all right. You know, you need to get some help, right? You need to talk to me, bro. Talk to me. So talk to us about that day, man. Like, what was going on, bro?
Yeah, so pretty much, so now that's going 2023.
Right.
That was a Sunday.
Right.
I remember opening the door, you parked across the street.
Mm-hmm.
You're right there, and I was like, what the hell are you doing here?
Mm-hmm.
I closed everybody off. I shut my mom off. I shut everybody off. This is, I believe it was in April that happened.
Yeah.
And so this is about fourth month after I left my relationship with my son's mother.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was a failure. I just broke up my dream of having a family. Now my son has to be raised in a broken family.
Mm-hmm.
One of those expectations I never dreamt of.
Mm-hmm.
One of those things I was fearful of having a child was to have, society norm is divorce, separation, child support, blah, blah, blah.
And you grew up in the opposite. You had a mom and a dad.
I had a mom, dad. No one in my family is divorced. No, we don't do
Divorce.
Separations, divorces. We saw it,
Yeah.
And so now here it is. I'm the black sheep once again. I failed my family. All this weight, 100% on me, and I was like, I'm not worth being here anymore.
Wow.
Even though I have my son, and I was going to hang myself.
I felt it, bro.
And I want to say that was one of those, within that week, I would have been gone.
Wow.
But he showed up. I was like, what are you doing?
Bro?
He never stops by. He's always too busy. No. But yeah, he showed up. I let him in. I was like, fuck, he's going to tell me something, and I let him talk. And I just sat there and cried. It was, and I appreciate you.
I love you, man.
But yeah, I do remember that, but come to find out, I had severe anemia, and it was cutting, I guess, when you're that, and my hemoglobin levels were so low, so I wasn't getting oxygen, and so I was passing out. I was, all the cognitive issues I was dealing with. Even that April, after leaving your house from the UFC fight, I busted my head.
Yeah.
I only had 2 beers.
Yeah.
And the first question there, were you drinking? I had 2 beers at Danny's house. No. And it was like over the course of the whole entire thing. Like, I knew Easter was the next day. I wasn't, doing nothing. Get home, yank the curtains off the the thing because I was going to wash that. By the time I wake up, put it in the dryer, come home, hang it back up. That was the plan that night. I think I was home by like 10 o'clock or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just, I jumped up on the chair, passed out, woke up, skull fracture. I had to I drove myself to the ER. They put like 8 stitches in my eyebrow because I busted my eye socket and because I passed out, I fainted. And at that point.
So your health was pretty bad, bro.
Yeah.
Was this after you had your surgery, or was this?
This was years. It was like 2 years after the surgery.
2 years after the surgery.
Yeah, and it's just the depression, the blood issues, all that, and just I was abusing alcohol. I felt lost.
It was like a perfect storm.
It was just a spiral of just everything, and I didn't want to be alive anymore. Everybody's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, I don't know. The doctors are running tests, but they don't know. But there's something wrong with me. Well, what's wrong with you? I don't know. Once I know, I'll let you know. Well, that wasn't acceptable to my ex. It wasn't acceptable to different people.
Right.
But if I don't know, how am I supposed to,
Right.
And then I remember May, I actually called my mom, pretty much that cry for help before I killed myself. She pretty much called the ambulance, 5150 me.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, bro. So did you come out and you tell your mom everything that was going on up here? What you were thinking? Or?
No, because I was because even that year I had to stop playing softball because I was too dizzy. I couldn't run.
Right.
Like I couldn't play softball. And it was like, well, what do you mean you're too dizzy? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I can't do anything. I didn't know.
Right.
Like, it was one of those, it sucks, but now I do know.
Right.
But, so my mom calls, the hotline for the VA, crisis hotline. Ambulance shows up. My mom gets to the house. I guess she was at my cousin's house, which stays in Oakley that day.
Oh, wow.
And so she comes over and my mom's pissed off but scared at the same time because 2 cop cars show up at the same time. And so she was like, I didn't, she was telling the cop, like, no, go away. I just want him to go to the hospital. I don't want him to get arrested.
Right.
Right.
And they're like, no, we're just here because of the type of call. We're here for the protection of the ambulance drivers.
Yeah. Make sure you're not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we go to the VA. They assess me for the night. And then they actually, with the VA, they sent me to a 10-day program in Concord.
Wow.
To get more evaluations done. And that's where I got introduced to different type of therapies.
Yeah.
Mind spotting, like different things, not just the basic counseling.
Yeah.
And I was like, what the hell is this? And it was crazy. So it opened my eyes to there's different type of help out there. It's
not just one.
There's not just one, but there's multiple. There's different, there's
avenues.
Yeah. Like, if you think about stuff and you're doing this, it's the rapid eye movement and, there's so many different things, and it opened my eyes. But then there, I was kind of out of my place because it was a rehab center. So there was a lot of people on drugs, severe alcoholism, all that stuff. And I'm like looking at these and I was like, yeah, I drink. And they're like, well, how much do you drink? I was like, I don't know, a pint every like 3 days. And they're like, I kind of think about that movie where Bob Saget, he's like, yeah, have you ever, thought, you know what I'm talking about? But, that's how I felt. I was like, what the hell? Like, they're like, man, I'm drinking two handles a day, and I have to wake up 3-4 times. And I was like, what the hell? I didn't know what the shakes were. I didn't, I never had the withdrawals or none of that stuff. But I was like, it kind of opened my eyes and, I was listening and learning about them. I was like, well, I still abused alcohol.
Yeah.
I use it as a coping mechanism. I abused it. Yeah. And I take full ownership. And so I do that 10-day program in Concord and I get back, I'm like, I'm cured. No.
Yeah. No, not at all.
It at least opened the light that, but yeah, 2023 was just a horrible thing. So, dealing with that. So that was
in 23?
2023.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then Yeah. So that was June 2023. July 2023, I get shoulder surgery.
Oh, that's right.
So now I'm sitting at the house in complete pain, still screwed up, not knowing shit.
Not taking no pills.
Nothing. And because like even after the surgery, I don't take pills.
Right.
So I had rotator cuff surgery, and I handed it to somebody. I don't want to say that on camera, but I gave the pain pills that they prescribed to me for the surgery. I'm anti-pill. Like I'll drink some water and suck it up before I have to take pain pills.
Right.
But it's now I'm in my head some more.
Yeah.
Oh, my life is miserable, and now I can't even move my arm.
You're feeling sorry for yourself.
And now I can't sleep either.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I just wanted to die. Like I was like, I'm done. This ain't the fucking life, and it ain't going to get any better.
Right.
And I 100% detached myself from everybody. Like if you called, voice mailbox is full. I didn't give a fuck. I seen it. I look at it. I'm like, sucks that you're calling. I ain't answering it.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it was. And then my mom, she really knew something was wrong, and so her and a really good friend, Anna, they got together, and I guess from what I found out, there's a couple other people that were involved, but they reached out to my buddies in Georgia that Brandon Watts and Johnny Grimes, and they run a nonprofit out there for veterans, Operation Rally Point. And, my mom reached out to them like, do you know Robert Ayres? And instantly, that's our boy, blah, blah, blah. And they started just going off, oh, hey, he was our gunner and blah, blah, in the military. Mom was like, he needs your help.
Wow, bro.
Me not knowing shit. So, at this time, I have zero energy. So, like, I'm sleeping all day long. Like, with the pain and everything else. So I'm passed out on the couch, and then I just remember getting a pillow thrown at my face. I get woken up. I'm like, who the fuck's in my house? It was Brandon.
Wow, bro.
Brandon and Johnny. I think Johnny came in first because, but yeah, and, this fucking Johnny guy, he has such a fucking ugly ass voice. But yeah, he's like, they both of them, even Watts. He has the
military guys, right?
Yeah. So we can talk shit, but they have the southern draw, and like, hey boy, get your ass up. And I'm just looking like I'm like
beautiful, bro.
I'm like, the fuck y'all doing in my house? Y'all in Georgia?
Yeah.
And then, but pretty much, my mom didn't know how I was going to react.
Yeah.
And so they
were ready for whatever, though. I'm
however
sure.
I jumped up, whatever else, either they're going to take me out or, whatever, and then pretty much my mom came in and, and pretty much, they came and they're like, yeah, your mom called saying that, you need somebody to talk to, and I was like, yeah, well, I got a doctor's appointment in San Francisco. So I guess you guys are seeing San Francisco tonight.
Yeah.
So we all went, had a good old time,
Right on, bro.
And then while we were, out in San Francisco, they told me about this place in Texas called Camp Hope.
Okay.
Camp Hope?
Camp Hope. It's pretty much a nonprofit that helps with combat veterans with PTSD.
Right on.
And it's by the PTSD Foundation of America.
Okay.
Nice.
Never heard of this shit, but with their nonprofit in Georgia, they've, sent some guys to this place. It's definitely not a camp, but, it's Camp Hope.
Yeah.
But so I was like, well, I'm already on workman's comp with my shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't have to ask permission to take time off or anything like that. I was like, fuck it.
You were open to it right away.
100%.
You were like,
I didn't fight it.
at this point, you said,
What else?
yeah, what else can happen?
I'm about to die anyway, so
Yeah.
fuck it. I might just die in Texas.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that because a lot of guys would be like, man, fuck this, fuck you, fuck everybody.
I knew something was wrong,
Right on.
but I didn't know what it was. And
But you needed help.
I needed help.
Right.
I was fucking so depressed, just crying every day. Fucking, there's so many times I tied the rope up on the railing.
Wow. Fuck, bro. Yeah, bro. I'm glad you're still here with us, brother.
Yeah.
Strong motherfucker, man.
Mm-hmm.
So you get to Camp Hope. How was your first day, bro?
I was scared. And then you get this. So we get to Camp Hope, And, I'm waiting at the airport because they paid for your flight. My buddy Watts called fucking, I want to say the next day or 2 days later, I was on the plane flight over there, and get there and they're like, oh, hey, you're going to be assigned to Delta Bay, blah, 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 And I was like, I didn't know what to expect. I was, and, I'm thinking I didn't even do any time to research,
Right.
But right before, so I got served papers, because of my ex not believing me and, everything else. So I had 24 hours to respond right before I
You're
took
leaving.
off.
Oh, wow.
So after you have a 24-hour grace period to do the response, the response to it. So I had to do that. And I was like, I don't know what the hell. And so luckily, I kept a lot of notes. So
Okay.
it was easier to do that. So that was a quick, easy little hurdle before taking off. But everything was boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Get to Camp Hope. And the first week, I was like, what the fuck am I doing here?
Yeah.
And these guys are schizos. These guys are like straight up heroin addicts.
Yeah.
Like, like all, it's people with mental disorders.
Yeah.
We have PTSD.
Yeah.
And there's some other symptoms that actually develop with PTSD. So like if you may had schizophrenia a little bit, but because of the PTSD, it could amplify it.
It ignited that.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's so many different things.
Yeah.
And so the course now, the next 7 months of my life, this is where I disappeared.
This is where Rob went into his cocoon.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So in this time period, so the program is 4 months.
Yeah.
I was there 7 months.
Wow.
You could leave after 4, you get graduation. I think it was on the 6th month.
Yeah.
But I was there for 7 months. And the first 4 months, I was, learning and I was going with the flow. They're like, God this, God that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, I believe. And my mentor, Lance, so we had to do 2 peer-to-peer talks. So pretty much like a presentation to your employees type thing.
Right.
I was like, I'll do those all day.
Yeah.
And so, but you had to do on something you had to learn. And so my first assignment was teach the class on faith.
Oh.
And I was like, that sucks. I don't know shit about it.
Yeah.
Shit. Reading the Bible, I didn't know Jobs.
Yeah.
Jobs.
Yeah.
But I said Jobs.
Yeah.
Psalms, not palms.
I'm still learning too, bro. Yeah.
I'm like, so I'm doing this and I'm saying there's guys that are like, that know the religion and everything else, and they're laughing at me.
But that was a good way to teach you it.
Yeah, I was like, so
that makes a lot of sense.
This is coming from Jobs. And they're like, no, it's Jobs. But yeah, so this program is 100% faith-based.
Right on. Bro.
The whole thing, the 100% faith-based, surrendering yourself to allow God to lead you.
Getting rid of that ego.
Yeah, the ego and pride got you in the trenches.
You're in. Yeah.
And, by like what they taught me, sit in the passenger seat. God is driving.
Yeah.
You just allow him. If you trust in God, God is going to give you some hurdles, but it's in the right path.
Mm-hmm.
Just trust in him. And it took a lot of acceptance.
Yeah.
And that was my therapy. So they actually got me with my counselor, Janetta. And she was an ACT therapist. So acceptant cognitive therapy or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's not BCT, it's ACT. And I didn't realize until then that's the type of therapy I needed.
Yeah, bro.
And so, because like during the VA, you pretty much just have the behavioral cognitive therapy. And with acceptance, and I learned there's a difference between tolerating and acceptance.
Yeah.
I guess I just tolerated shit.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so, it was 7 months. So while in this program, they want you to do a recovery program. So you can pick and choose NA or NA.
Oh.
So either Alcohol Anonymous, pick your poison. That's the group that you're gonna be part of.
Right.
And I was like, well, I abuse alcohol.
Yeah.
So, I've touched coke. I've used to be a pothead. I got some cool stories to the NA, but I would go to the NA meetings. I would go to the AA meetings.
So you did both?
Hell yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, all that. I started learning. I am a 100% advocate of everybody should do one of those programs.
Right on, bro.
Even if you don't have an addiction.
Yeah. Makes you more aware.
Yeah. And it's overall the harms that you've done to others.
Yeah.
Because when you're not in your right mind, you're an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
You've done harm to others.
Mm-hmm.
And step 4 is recognizing all that stuff. Recognizing all of your wrongdoings, all the harm that you caused to other people.
Amen, bro.
And then going to actually confront and get amends from people.
Yeah.
So I completed the whole 12-step program, and it's fascinating, and it's like, I don't do the meetings or any of that stuff anymore. I haven't been one since, just because, I'm confident in everything else, but learning about it, learning about yourself, and learning the shitty shit that you've done.
Mm-hmm.
I called my mom, and I was like, "Hey, mom, so I got a whole bunch of lies I need to come clean."
Right.
Right.
She's like, well, I already knew that.
Yeah.
I'm coming clean.
Yeah.
I am cleansing my soul. I did crash your car and and I replaced it.
Yeah.
I drove around because I'm really good at picking car parts off the cars. And I replaced it so I wouldn't get caught up.
Yeah. But I'm sure that made you feel good though, just getting it out.
Everything.
Yeah, bro. Yeah.
And and so learning through those therapy things, and that's where the book originated from.
Yeah.
So with this program, you have to tell your life story to graduate this program.
Oh.
If you don't get up there and tell your story, and we only have about 100 guys there.
Yeah.
But you're standing up front.
Yeah.
And you have to be there for at least an hour talking.
Okay.
And in order to graduate, that was your step 4, they called it.
Yeah.
That was you releasing. Because one thing I learned, if you keep shit bottled up, you're never going to heal.
Never.
Once you get it out and you do right, make your amends, you're going to feel so much lighter. And then one thing I learned while being in there, so the first couple months, it was all AA, NA. And then everybody was like, oh, stay away from Codependency, Anonymous. That was for pussies.
Oh.
We're all alpha males.
Yeah.
Fucking,
right.
They're like, yeah, that's for the pussies. And just like, the hell? And so like, I actually, start reading the book because there was one of the Codependency Anonymous books in there. Start reading, I'm like, that's me. That's me. Like, fuck, I identify, there's 56 characteristics, traits as a codependent. And I identified as like 40 of them.
Oh, really?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, of course, I start reading the book and I start putting myself into Codependency Anonymous. And that truly helped me. And I thought codependent, I was like, I'm not dependent on nobody.
Right.
No, codependency is completely opposite of that.
Yeah.
And so pretty much I do this in all my relationships, and that's why I'm setting boundaries. You got to learn boundaries.
Yeah.
And that's where codependency teaches you that. And, it's setting aside your wants, your needs, your desires for the sake of your partner.
Right.
Or for your coworker or for your employer.
Right.
And you set aside everything of you to, for whatever they want.
To please them or
to be the people pleaser and so it was like that right there opened my eyes to a whole bunch of different things in the therapy. And so with codependency is learning the harm you done to yourself. AA and NA is about learning about the harm you done to others. So learning that as therapy and all the group sessions and all that was just an eye opener. And I was actually starting to enjoy it. And, I was at one point, like, I'll start teaching classes. I was, trying to like get more guys involved.
To make them understand it.
Yeah. I was like, codependency ain't for pussies. It's for me.
That's powerful.
Damn, bro.
And so like, with the therapy, that was the big thing because I had a lot of blanks of my life.
Yeah.
And a lot of blanks in your life are usually trauma marks.
Yes.
And so I had to write a timeline. Well, she's like, here's a piece of paper. Write your timeline.
As many things you could remember.
Yeah. And so my 8x11 piece of paper turned into 7 of them.
Wow.
So now it's 7 feet long. My timeline. And so every therapy session, once a week, sometimes twice a week, it's strung on her wall. And she would look at it and she's like, why is that blank?
Right.
It got all the way down to, I can remember all the way back to 5 years old. That's where the book starts.
Wow.
And going through all the little tiny details, all the different relationships, obviously even like AA, NA, all that stuff, you got to list all.
Everything.
Yeah.
Bucket naked.
Yeah. Pretty much. If you don't remember the name, what car?
Yeah.
Right.
What do you remember of that one?
What did it smell like? What did you hear?
Yeah,
right?
it was like
what did you
Camaro
feel?
chick, the chick at the roller skating rink.
Yeah.
Right.
But writing all that out, all the way down to, all the different, like when I was with my first girlfriend, what was I doing? Well, I was only drinking Captain Coke, no beers. But then this, my next girlfriend, it was Hennessy and Heineken's.
Yeah.
So everything down to what job I was, like every little aspect of everything for every single year, everything.
As much as you could remember.
Yeah.
Everything.
And so that's how deep of a the therapy I was doing. And then on top of that, doing the AA and NA and the codependency. Then I got into Sex and Love Anonymous, SLAW, getting into that, learning about that. I was just getting into all these different recovery groups.
Yeah,
and learning that everyone, I don't want to say everybody, but I had an issue with everything. I was using sex as a coping mechanism.
Right.
Obviously I was using alcohol as a coping mechanism. Searching for validation as a coping mechanism. It was all these different things. And it's just an eye-opener. And it's like, was I a sex addict? No. Right. Was I an alcoholic? No. Was I, all these other things? No. But I do recognize I abused it.
Yeah.
And I can take ownership of it. And I can admit my wrongs. And, it's like, I feel there's so many more sorries I have to say to anybody and everybody.
Right.
You got to do it. You have to cleanse your soul. You have to, reach out. Even though it might be super hard, you got to do it. That's
bro.
like everything that I've been, doing is like now staying mindful, positive, continue to grow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Good stuff. All right. So you went through all that. How was it knowing, okay, this is my final day here, right? Now I really have to go put everything that I've learned in the last 7 months to work now.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm sure you learned some coping mechanisms, some mindfulness, some awareness, being conscious now of everything, right? Being sober from everything, right? So how was that feeling getting on the plane to come back to the real world where you now have a son that's waiting for you? You have to deal with the baby mama drama that, you're going through, right? Now you have to get back to work, right? Because the reason why I say it is because like talking to my counselors and psychiatrists and all that stuff, right? My biggest problem was like, man, I opened up to you and I told you things that I never told anyone in my life. And now I'm feeling like very insecure and pissed off at the same time. Now I have to get back to work. And it was hard. It would take me like 2 to 3 weeks to kind of level out, right? I'd be so mad for 2 or 3 weeks and embarrassed and confused, right? And I mean, I didn't go through no boot camp like that, but those talks showed me that just getting it out there, getting it off my chest with someone was helping me a lot, but it made me feel a certain way when I was done.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you being gone for that long, that had to be some kind of a challenge, bro, just stepping back into the civilized world again. How was that feeling?
Yeah. So I graduated at the end of March. And so April.
In 23?
Or, yeah.
20,
no, this is
24?
Yeah, 24 now.
Wow, bro.
Yeah, so I dipped out through Christmas.
Right.
Thanksgiving.
I remember.
New Year's, all those, I was gone, and, especially with that program, it's like, you can write, it's like jail. You can write letters.
Yeah.
But, you get one phone call for 30 minutes once a week.
Yeah, I remember.
You know, and the first month, nothing. You know, no cell phones. The whole time
They strip you of everything.
Because they want to strip you from all distractions. So that way you can focus on yourself.
Right.
You know, and it was a hard adjustment because honestly, like people are starting to get cell phone addictions. Right.
Right.
Social media. How many people are swiping all day long?
Yeah.
Right.
You know, looking at, you know, now you can measure how long you've been on the thing, but guarantee a lot of people are on there
Very long time.
Instagram,
Right.
all that for hours at a time per day.
Yeah.
You know, it's an addiction. You know, it's like little things we need to recognize, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I graduated March. I come back April, and I'm still on leave for workman's comp for state disability for my shoulder. You know, but then it's ending. I was trying to milk it at this point.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, you know, I was able to do this, but like because I was in Texas, there was no pay because I was in California.
Oh.
So while I was out there, luckily I had a nest egg. But then also being a veteran, I didn't realize all the different resources out there for support.
Oh, wow.
And especially being in California, there ain't shit out here. You know, there's a Wounded Warrior project.
Yeah.
That's the only thing you can ever think of. There ain't no local nonprofits for veterans, or at least, you know. But being in this program, they teach you, you know, there is help out there for you.
Yeah.
And so while I was out there, you know, I'd write a letter to different nonprofits, and they were paying my mortgage for me.
No way, bro.
Yeah. And I'm like looking at all this, I'm doing the right thing, and blessings are coming back.
Wow.
You know, and it's like, God is great.
God is great, bro.
Yeah. And so it's like, you're seeing that if you just allow it to happen, it's going to happen naturally. If you force it, that's how you get the anxiety. That's how you get into depression. And like what they say, anxiety is you future tripping.
Yeah. Yeah.
Depression is thinking about the past. Think about the current.
The moment you're in right now. That's all that matters, bro.
That's all that matters. And, you know, there's a lot of us, we future trip.
Yeah.
We worry so much. And it's okay. Just like how we started this thing.
Yeah.
Wish you guys would have videotaped me in the beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I was future tripping.
Yeah.
Right. But look at me now.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah.
100%, bro.
But yeah, so coming back April, scared as shit.
Yeah.
Because I have so much high expectation for myself.
Yeah.
I see the clarity. I see all this stuff. But now I'm back in my house where all the thoughts, the memories, hoping the rope ain't there no more.
Yeah.
You know, like hopefully that rope is in the garbage can somehow.
Yeah.
You know, but I was scared.
Yeah,
Like
I bet.
I made this huge breakthrough. The new Rob came out.
Yeah, man.
You know, is that going to last?
Right.
And so April, I took that month to kind of recruit, stuff like that. And then I went back to a big corporation in May.
Mm-hmm.
And my mindset was locked and loaded. And I lasted at that corporation for 1 month.
Yeah, I remember, bro. I remember.
I went back to work. And honestly, it was probably within a week or 2 weeks I was back. I gave my 2 week notice. So I at least gave them the respect of 2 weeks. But after being with that company for 20 years.
20 years.
I only had to go back.
Lifetime.
I had to only go back for 2 weeks and then gave them my 2 week notice. Like that's how my mind changed just within that 7 months.
Bro.
Taking a step back.
Maturity.
Yeah.
Maturity at its finest, bro.
Yeah. And I was like,
up here.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And yeah, all my fears. And I was like, no, there's this one guy that's always said, there's no good time to start. So just start now. Stop being scared.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's jump into that.
All right,
Can we
let's
jump
go.
in? All
Let's do
right,
it.
bro. All right, man. Hey, so
Wait,
first,
hold on. I want to ask you this first. So, because I know we're going to jump into a different thing. So, what would you tell, because obviously your story is so amazing and now you're sharing a lot more details than even on the book. Resilience just keeps going in my head, right? Like it's just amazing. And, you know, it's beautiful to hear this whole story. And now you're here, bro. Right? But what would you tell that person that is not where you are now, that is in the mud right now,
Yeah.
that doesn't have the resources, it doesn't even understand what their trauma is yet. What would you tell them right now if you had an opportunity? What would you tell yourself?
Yeah. What honestly, lose your ego, your pride. Those are the worst things ever. And as I look at it, temptation is the devil.
Yes.
It's doing what you want to do. That's temptations. That's the devil talking to you. That's not doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes the right thing may be the hard thing to do because it doesn't make sense.
Right.
But yeah, so just letting go of your pride, letting go of your ego, and just to allow it to naturally take its course. It's uplifting. It's scary at times, but shit happens when it's supposed to happen. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so proud of this dude,
I'm
bro.
very proud. And I think we need to cleanse a little bit and talk about something different. But I have one quote that just hit me hard and from your book and it goes to what you were just saying. And I just want to read it out loud. And I don't know if this is your quote or you took it from somewhere or whatever, but it's an amazing quote. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about facing what hurts you and choosing to grow anyway.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a bar.
I gotta say it again.
One more time.
Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about facing what hurt you and choosing to grow anyway.
Yeah.
That's amazing, bro.
It's one of those, you can forgive, but I won't forget.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. You have everything in life. You can either be pissed off or accept it happened and just move on.
Move on, man.
Yeah.
Move on.
Otherwise, you can fucking fuck your whole day up.
But just looking back at those, like one of my just one thing that my counselor said was eventually at some point, Danny, you gotta fucking stop running from these demons and turn around and have a conversation with them.
Yeah.
Because you're not a child anymore. You're a grown man.
Yeah.
Right? You were so innocent. You had no idea. You had no help. You had no one to run to, right? So be the man right now that you needed at that moment, right? And that's something like that. That's really been in my core, bro. Is just reiterating that to myself,
Right.
and like being the father and the man to my kids that I never had, that I always wanted.
Right.
You dig what I'm saying, bro?
Yep.
Man, I'm so proud of you, bro.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. So let's jump into the nitty gritty, bro.
Let's do it.
So before we jump onto this, first of all, you guys are gonna be blown away by this. So, I'm a real advocate for small business, bro. I think it's always been in my blood. It's been in my DNA. Working with my mom, crossing that bridge in Coronado all the time for me, and then just working with her and seeing how some people are treated, right? And not really knowing or being educated of the opportunities that we all have here in America, right? So the one thing that always been close to me was small business, bro. Since I was a kid, man, like walking past little mom and pop shops and wondering how they did it, right? Thinking, how can I do it, right? I've always had an entrepreneur spirit since I was a kid. I think I was blessed by that, by many people that came in through my life, right? No matter what happened to me, though, somehow, some way, I remained to stay positive and try to always have a smile, to be enthusiastic and motivated, and to be a cheerleader for everyone, and just always trying to strive to do my best, right? And then I've had people in my life tell me to, whenever you're going through the mud, focus on the sunlight, right? So I've always had these real positive things, no matter the amount of negativity I went through in my life. I was blessed. And now that I look back at it, at this age with my relationship with God, I tell myself, man, that was God talking to me, right? Keeping me afloat. And I didn't even know that, right? So small business to me is, man, we're one in one, bro, right? And I try to tell people all the time, like, so I met Rob and he told me about the amount of time he had at the company he worked for, and hearing his passion, hearing how he talked to his customers, hearing his education with the product he was servicing, hearing how much he loved it, right? And his experiences. And most important, the one that always sticks out to me is how you how you went about your customer service and knowing people's names and numbers and the way you talked to them and how you took care of them and how you communicated with them. You worked in that business as if it was your own business.
Right.
So I remember like after talking to you multiple times, I'm like, no, this motherfucker has it. He just doesn't know he has it.
Right.
Right. And Angel saw that in me. Multiple other men saw that in me. And I didn't know. I mean, I knew I had it. I just didn't really I believed in myself, but I didn't believe enough.
Yeah.
Right. And I felt it was my duty, like in my core, it was God talking to me, like, I have to motivate this guy or at least drop a dime in his bucket to make him really start thinking, you can do it, bro. You're running a business already. Right? You have the communication, you have the customer service, you know the product, you know the system, you have the experience, you have the years, you have every single fucking ability to run a business and do what you've done, but now do it for yourself.
Right.
So I remember the first time I talked to you, bro, you kind of looked at me like, I've been thinking about it. And I'm like, no, bullshit. It's time.
Right.
Start getting your fucking license, bro, so you can start making what you make now a day.
Right.
Right. And I remember, like, I don't know, this is just my perception of telling you, but I remember you getting kind of nervous. Like, I don't know if I was kind of bullying you or you felt I was bullying you to push you in that direction. Right. But I felt like, man, you know what? Multiple people believed in me and they saw in me what I didn't see in myself. And it was funny because the roles were reversed. And I saw what you have. I'm like, dude, I don't think he really understands it.
Yeah.
So what was the worm? No, before that, what made you burn the ships and say, fuck you,
Yeah.
I'm starting my business because I believe in myself. What was that worm that went in there and said, let's burn the ships, bro?
So there was a really love-hate relationship that I had with my employer.
Yeah.
And it got to a point where I start learning employment law and everything else.
Yeah.
And I just started being a thorn in their side. And, I took them to court.
Yeah.
I was like, because I did my job right.
Yeah.
They should be held accountable to paying us correctly, to be, we're supposed to look up to our employer.
Especially after 20 years service, bro.
Yeah.
Right.
And so after some court battles back and forth, I was like, I'm going to become management.
Yeah.
I can change. I can change the culture of a huge corporation because I'm this little tiny manager.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So that took, 5 years. But with that, I want to say I started this idea, I want to say back. So we met actually 2016, I think it was.
Yeah.
And by 2018, and it wasn't you dropping dimes in a bucket. No, you're throwing dimes at me.
You're hitting them in the head with the hole, baby.
You're trying to skip rocks with the dimes.
Let's go, baby.
But so it was like by 2018, I was like, I can do this. But that perfectionism in me was kicking in.
Right.
I need to know how to do this. I need to know how to do that. I need all this stuff.
Right.
Making excuses. But to me, was dotting the I's, crossing the T's, and all that. While I have this big old guy over here, throwing quarters and rocks and everything else my way.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. But and so then COVID hit.
Yes.
COVID hit. So obviously that put a stop to it.
That put a wrench in it. Yeah.
And so at that point, and then that's when I got with a new relationship. And I was even intrigued during that because her dad owned a business. So he was a business owner.
Okay.
And so I'm, now picking his brain,
Right.
about different things. So it was like the thought was still there. At the same time, you have this guy over here saying, let's go. Scared money don't make money,
baby.
All these different things. And so I'm like, I was scared.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I was making great money, and I was being safe and I was being cautious.
Yeah, 100%.
And, honestly, Danny, you would always say, you got to get out of your comfort zone. You're living in comfort zone. And I was like, but I like my company.
Everybody does, bro.
I wake up and there's a paycheck in my,
I know what I'm getting every 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it was that. But then the eye opener was once my relationship failed, that's when I started my LLC, 2023. But I knew at that point I wasn't in the right mindset.
Right.
There's other shit going on. And so it was a crutch a little bit.
Right.
But, it was at that point I knew I needed to get myself right.
Right.
Get myself right. So that way I can be right for my son and then pursue this business correctly, and actually hold it to the standards I want to be
100%.
Right.
And so, that's what I needed to do. And, and that's when I was like, hey, it's game time. Only took me to go back to that company for 2 weeks.
To say, like, it's rock and roll.
It's time. Because I started it in June, that was like the now or never.
Yeah.
Because you can't start a business, the pest control business, in the wintertime.
Right.
There ain't no, the bugs are gone.
Right.
You know,
Oh, yeah, yeah.
The opportunity window is March to, like, say, July to really get a base.
Yeah.
I'm already halfway there.
Yeah.
How am I going to survive in wintertime?
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, it's now or never. Scared money don't make money. No time is the right time.
Let's go, baby.
All those those slogans that you should write a book.
I'm gonna do it, bro.
Yeah.
I'm behind you.
Yeah, but it was all those things, and it was like it's now or never.
Yeah, bro.
It happened.
So you started your business in 24.
Yeah,
last year.
Yeah.
So you've been in business for a full year? Almost a full year?
In June 10th, I'll be a year.
Wow. Bro.
Yeah.
Bro, I'm so fucking proud of you, dude.
Yeah. It was scary.
Yeah.
I know we're going to talk about that. But,
so so everybody who's listening, man, and I know there's a lot of men out there, young women that are thinking about it, that have all the skills and all the bells and whistles to do it. But you're scared, right? How am I going to get money? How am I going to get paid? What am I going to do, right? You got to figure it out. And once you're in there, you will figure it out. So for you, Rob, what I want you to relate with a lot of these folks that are listening and watching, all the millions and millions and millions, right? Because we're going to get there one day, I promise you. You are currently, what I try to tell people, like how I explain it, like your first year, you've been in actual war before, right? So it's to me, like, that's how I use that phase. Because to me, my first year was war. Like, I had to wake up every day. I had to prepare the night before. I had to get my schedule ready. Who was I going to go talk to? How was I going to go visit? How was I going to train the guys? How I was going to go sell? How, prepare for a competitor being on the same property as me? What kind of conversation am I having with them, right? Everything was a mental war for me. Right. And I took it very serious. And there was many times, like I like to say, and one of my babysitters, she blessed me with it, is anytime you're going through the mud, right? Focus on the sunlight. So to me, I've always interpreted, like, when you're having a bad day, when you're in the middle of a pickle, right? When you're in your worst day ever and the mud is up to your freaking nose, bro, you just keep moving forward and you just keep focusing on that sunlight, because eventually it's gonna get better, right? Yep. But we do not stop. We do not stop, no matter what, right? Yep. And that's always been like something I've carried in my brain. So I want you to explain to people, like, how has it been your first year, right? Yeah. What's been the goods, the bads, the uglies, right? How did you overcome them? To just give them paint that picture to them of how it's been.
Yeah, so being with the other company for 20 years, I was so used to my phone ringing, emails popping up.
Yeah.
And being on my own, I thought it was worst mistake ever. The first month, I'm literally staring at my phone. Why is my phone not ringing? Why is there no emails in the brand new email that I just made?
Yeah. Right. Did I make the right decision?
Yeah. Like, honestly, after the first month, I made $600.
Wow, bro. Really?
$600 I made the first month. And I was like, this ain't gonna happen. This ain't gonna happen. I think that covered the gas just to get, but it was like, I'm grateful for the first handful of customers that came about that took the risk. There's I have this one customer in Bethel Island. She was a great network that referred neighbors.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh wow.
Blessings, bro.
And then, so referrals, and I am 100% still today and I stand firm on giving honest pest control.
Yeah.
That company I used to work for, it was about profits.
Yeah.
And, profits first.
Numbers.
Then let's make sure, but make sure they give you a good review.
Right.
Yeah.
It was, I'm completely anti that.
Right.
It's about being honest, being honest, being real, being yourself.
Yes.
Customers are just going to come to you, and I learned, by just walking the street, I would just go and park my truck in random parking lots just to be the billboard.
Yeah. 100%, bro.
I would go knock on doors. And honestly, in the beginning, I would knock on the door and I would be like, hi, I'm Robert with blah, blah, blah company. I mean, Liberty Pest Services.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you'll forget.
Yeah. That's happened to me,
20
bro.
years of saying that company.
Right.
And so it's going to happen. It's going to happen.
Yes.
But just pretend like you stuttered. Or I would feel like, oh, well, that's the company I used to work for. 20
years.
20 years.
Yeah.
I was there 20 years. It's part of me.
Yeah.
But it's 100% not giving up.
100%.
Thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. And is offering. Like with me is I'm offering different things that from what I learned over 20 years with the other company and being in management and actually seeing all the complaints.
Yeah.
And developing pretty much my model over the customer's complaints.
Yes.
Your bill is always increasing.
Yeah.
Well, mine's don't. Why? It's like, of course, like what I say is, if you're trusting me and you're loyal to me as you hire me, then my loyalty back is not raising your rate. As long as you stay active, pay your bill on time.
Yeah.
It's, I'm going to help you as you help us. So that way you can actually financially budget.
Right.
So it's like the different mindset. I'm willing to just up and give advice, and some customers are like, well, how much is this? I'm like, no, it's nothing. It's free. You're good.
I think I called you for the other house and you're like, I can go and charge you, but I don't have to. I just tell you got to do this, and this.
Yeah. Why not?
Yeah.
That's how I live. Why not give it? Because honestly, I now built trust with you that you're going to refer maybe a cousin, maybe another neighbor, like, oh no. And I do have a small presence like on Facebook where I get, people that are, hey, I'm looking for somebody that'll handle ants, blah, blah, blah. And I'm seeing my name pop up from just random people.
That's freaking beautiful,
and,
bro.
my reviews that are coming in, honest, affordable,
right?
It's, the good thing. My website, if you look on it, it's completely black and white. I don't hide nothing.
Right.
And it's being true to that. And I feel I'm not going to mislead you. It's being true, honest. And I'm going to be at peace with myself with it because I can sleep at night knowing I'm not trying to rip you off.
100%, bro.
And, I think, and that's, but yes, just stay focused to your goal. I think that's the big thing that for anybody that's trying to start, don't be scared.
Yeah.
You wish you would have started earlier. It's one of those, I wish I would have started earlier. And it's just the fear is get over your fear because it actually will be okay.
Man, like, a lot of people laugh at me or don't laugh, but I think they kind of like, I think I raised their eyebrow. Like when I decided to burn the ships, a big part of fear really just kind of vanished.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to explain it, bro. Like I was so unbelievably pissed off I was so pissed off where I said, at this point, bro, I don't give two funky chickens if I'm working at Burger King. I cannot work for this man no more, right? So when I tell people, like, I don't fear anything. I really only fear God, right? I mean that with my whole heart. I don't try to worry about anything. I really try not to worry. Like, I have my struggles with my past and my trauma, and that's a fucking challenge that I'm working with every day. And I'm working on it so hard. But like right now, I really try to live in the moment, right? And when I wake up, I really tell God, man, just thank you for one more day with my family. Thank you for one more day, right? How can I make this day the best day I possibly can? How can I influence people? Use me, God. Use me as a vessel to touch people in the right way, to push people in the right way, to work with my team in the right way. What can I do to benefit them and their family, right? Because I want to see the people who are closest to me excel. I want to see their kids excel, bro, right? Because their win is a win for me, right? Not because I had anything to do it, but I'm truly joyful about that, right? So when I tell people, like, fear, I really believe fear is something made up here. It's really made up here. It's the devil wanting you to be scared, to give you reasons not to. Don't try it because of this, and then your brain starts making up so many scenarios of why you shouldn't do it, right? Where I come from, Logan Heights, there was no cheerleading, bro. There was no, you can do it. There was none of that. Like, hey, you stay in your fucking lane. You either work for that store, you work for Burger King, right? Or you cut grass here, you do that. And that's as far as you go, bro. There's no leaving these four corners here, right? And I was blessed to have seen Coronado. And I went through my stuff. And I think, man, like, as much as I hate to say it out loud, like, I think God does really put you through some shit, right? To really test you, bro. And I think as a child, I understood real quick, like, I can fucking sit here and cry, or I can put a fucking smile on my face and just keep moving forward, right? I didn't have anyone I could run to. Like, I remember getting my ass kicked by older kids, and I couldn't, my brother didn't give a shit about me. My sister was in her own world. My mom was working 3, 4, 5 fucking jobs like a Jamaican. I had no cousins or uncles or friends, really. So I just literally had to figure shit out on my own, right? I come home with a busted lip, a black eye. I tell my mom, we played football, whatever. I never told her I got my ass kicked by a fucking guy who was 10 years older than me because he wanted my football, right? So I want you to really hone in on that, bro. Like, fear. For business, so many people, they make an excuse, and I can't do this. Why I can't do it, right? Do you still fear when you wake, now that you're in the mud, now that you're in the middle of combat with developing your brand, your business? Do you have any fear every day? Or have you finally took that out of the equation and just say, it is what it is. I stay in my faith. I work my ass off. And if I do what I do, it's going to work out.
Yeah. So I eliminated 90% of the fear.
Okay. You still have a little bit.
Oh, yeah. I still have some in the reserve tank.
Yeah.
Just because the fear of the unknown. With the first year, it definitely has up and downs, and it creates some fears, but then there's some reliefs that come about. Some good months, some like, oh shit months.
Yeah.
And it's back in February, fear set in because the engine took a shit.
Right.
And I was like, what am I going to do?
Right.
This is going to set me back, especially after the low price tags that Ford and other shops were doing. I was like, oh man, I just took a gamble and I just lost, Right. But I was like, no, what can we do? How can we overachieve? I have another truck.
Yeah.
So, it was funny because I just took the logos off of my personal truck.
Yeah.
Because there was the cheapo ones that just to get started, I just slapped,
Right.
And I just took them off maybe like 2-3 weeks before that happened. I'm like, man, so I ran to the local vinyl wrapping place, and I was like, hey, you guys still have all my, the files and everything? They're like, yeah, I need this ASAP on that truck. And they're like, well, We already put it on. I was trying. I thought I was good.
So the same truck that you took the stickers, you took back to put them back on.
Yeah, it was just the cheap, just the little ones that are, on the decals for the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah, just like, we got you.
Yeah.
I was like, all right. So fast turnaround on that. So I was at least, but now the fear is like, oh, I don't have my big work truck that I'm able to do everything and anything on. Now I can only scale back to only pest control service or exclusion services.
Right.
Things I can do out of a
small pickup.
a little truck. And I was like, how am I going to do this? And so like I trying to like scale back on the advertising, and just because I didn't want people to call.
Yeah.
Just 'cause I'm the type, I don't want to say no to you.
Right.
No to me is a bad word.
Yeah.
It's what can I do to help you?
Yeah.
If I don't do it, I should still have an answer.
Yeah.
That's how if I can't do it, is, hey, call this number, call this pest control company. Like I'll refer them to other pest control companies. I have no problem with that.
Right.
I don't feel that there's a competition out there.
Right.
There's ample amount of potential out there. There's no competition.
100%. Who's your competition?
Honestly,
Yeah.
I do have competition.
Who?
All the big name corporations.
No. Who's your competition, bro?
Myself.
Yourself.
Yeah.
It's you every day, bro. And that's one thing that I was gonna tell you. And I try to tell everybody, bro, that when I understood that the only competitor that I have out there is that motherfucker in the mirror.
Yeah.
Right? The numbers that we did last year, the numbers we did last month, that is your competition.
Right.
And once you figure that out and you start climbing, right? And then all of a sudden, bro, you're all the way up here and you realize I left these fools in the dust because I'm only working on this guy.
Right. That's true. That's very true.
So I would advise that to anyone, bro. Like, just focus on you, bro. Focus on you're making yourself and your team and your system as best as possible, bro.
Yeah.
That's your competition.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and that's I focus. I have my goals set for the whole year.
Yeah.
I have the roadmap.
Yeah.
And now it's trying to stay on track with that roadmap that I set the end of last year.
Yeah.
Even though I only had basing numbers off of last year, you can't do so.
Right.
You're competing against yourself from the previous cycle.
Yeah.
And it's trying to figure out different ways of doing it. And I do have a couple other buddies that are in the pastoral industry that I help them out. They help me out.
Yeah.
And we're leaning on each other with ideas and stuff like that.
That's
And
freaking great, bro.
And it's opening their eyes because here I am, less than a year in, already exceeding what they're doing.
Wow.
And it's like I'm trying to teach, let them know, like, do exclusion, do offer other services, just don't spray for bugs.
Yeah.
Think outside the box.
Right.
Develop a skill.
But where'd that come from? That 20 years experience, bro.
100% of doing
You've
everything.
been doing it your whole life, but now it's a little different because you're doing it for yourself, but you've been doing it your whole life.
Yeah. It's like, it's just, I'm out there to help the customers, just in general to help.
Yeah.
And it's just the growth and making me better every day. And I'm not moving backwards.
Nice.
Like, I seen the past.
Right.
I don't need to go back there.
100%.
Yeah.
Bro, so I was just telling Angel, like, this dude was working for a company for 20 years. So most people who work for a company for 20 years are thinking about, man, I got 5, maybe 10 more years and I'm retiring, right? But you, like a lot of people who don't really share their story, but you, like a lot of people, said, you know what, dude? I'm gonna roll the dice.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm gonna roll the dice, and I'm gonna bet on myself, right? So, what would you tell the person who's been doing something like yourself for 20 years? Like, what kind of advice would you tell them? Like, you have an opportunity to retire in 10 years with a certain amount of money, or you have another 10 years where you can do it for yourself and 10 max the amount you were making those 20 years, bro, in 10 years.
Yeah, you just get out, pretty much don't settle. That's how I kind of look at it, is don't settle.
Yeah.
I could have, I got a full pension from the military. So I, medically, I get a disability. I don't have to work. I could have chose to, hey, I finished my 20 years.
Right.
I have enough money in my 401k, I can ration it and I'll be totally fine with my military money.
Right on, bro.
I could, and I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
It was like, does my back hurt? Does my knees hurt? Yeah. But guess what?
Yeah.
It doesn't stop me, because I want to grow. I got so much, it might have been that mindset of, helping, try to regain that trust to people for, the pest control. I'll be the pest control savior, you know? But it's like, just to do the right thing, and I can't just sit on the couch.
Right. So a question for you. So for me, like I don't like to be the same. Like if I'm gonna do something, I want to do it differently. I want to do it my way.
Yeah.
Right. So for you, is there something that you've done for 20 years, but is there something that you're servicing or doing something different with your service that other company never did? Like what makes you unique versus like I could call the guy who lives 2 blocks down that does the same thing, but what is something you offer or something that you think is unique to people out there?
Being in the pest control industry, we're heavily regulated by the agricultural department, by EPA, stuff like that. So there's not too much, that we can alter, but it's the knowledge, the, biology, all the different things about the insects. Like this is April, this is when all bugs are coming out from their hiding, so it's like having that knowledge and experience, but honestly, not being that pushy salesperson, to actually give the honest thing. Cause I believe doing the right thing, money will come.
Yeah.
But it's not about the money. It's actually doing the right thing. And that's where I bring that, granted, I have a lot better attention to detail than a lot of these guys that are just there for a paycheck.
Right. Because you have the passion.
I have the passion to the fullest.
Because I've had services that, it's just the guy with a hose, right? Just,
Like
orange tree, apple tree, don't care. Everything's hosed.
Everything's hosed.
They know nothing. Hey, do you know what this bug is about?
No.
They have no idea.
Yeah.
I've heard you. We've had a few conversations in person, but I've also seen the ones on Facebook, and you're like so passionate about bugs.
Bugs.
And like the, you have your product, right? Like you have a livery box spray. Like I haven't seen this. Like and
that's amazing, bro.
Yeah, and so like even with that, it's like a lot of people think, oh, I don't want to use pest control because they're going to use these harmful chemicals. It's like, take the time, have it with the passion, explain to them that a lot of the products that we use, because we're in California, they're one of the least hazardous products on the market, that your 409 cleaning product is actually more dangerous than the stuff we use.
Wow.
A lot of people don't see it. So by putting things in, taking the time to talk to the customer.
Educating them.
I really feel I'm more of an educator than a pest control guy.
So that's what I was going to tell you, bro. Like I really believe, like, one thing that I noticed off the bat when I met you, when you would talk about work, is you were really good at educating people on like different rodents and insects and spiders, right?
Yeah.
And I met many pest control guys before, and like Angel says, half of them don't have a freaking clue what bug they're looking at.
Yeah.
And for a great example, when we were talking in the kitchen, you saw a bee flying
earlier today,
and
a carpenter bee.
Within seconds, you knew what kind it was, and we're talking about 20 feet away.
Yeah,
right. To me, like a lot of people, and I tell people, like if you're in Brentwood, Antioch, Oakley, Pittsburgh, Discovery Bay, everywhere close, man, look for Rob Ayres, Liberty Pest Control Services, man.
And your website is what?
LibertyPestServices.com.
Man, let's go. I got a few more questions though.
Okay.
All right. What does success mean to you in business? Right?
Yeah.
Would you consider yourself successful right now? Or do you still think that's something you're still trying to achieve?
So when I look at successful, it's not about the money. It's not about money. It's knowing you're doing the right thing.
Right.
So right now I do feel very successful.
Oh, right on.
Good, bro.
All right. Another one. What advice would you give someone who's been through trauma and wants to rebuild?
Reach out. Don't be afraid to reach out. Lose your pride. Lose your ego. There is help out there. But by actually releasing it from yourself and being honest with yourself. There's so many times in my life I lied thinking just by giving just a little bit of the information was good enough. But no, being real, being honest, and just reaching out. And that's going to be the thing that you need to do.
Right on. If you could go back and talk to your younger self, what would you say? If you can talk to your high school self, what would you say? What would you tell them?
Keep those hubcaps on those cars.
That's a good one. You ain't lying, bro.
Life will be challenging, but listen to your elders. They actually have good advice.
Right.
Like it's not for punishment, but it's actually because of their experiences.
Right.
So yeah, it may not seem like good advice at the time, but it's, just stay focused, stay driven, and be as real as possible. And I think by doing that as a younger person, you're going to be a better, successful, older adult.
Okay. What do you hope people take away from your story?
That there is definitely light at the end of the tunnel. Like you can be the lowest of the low, and there is hope. There is, but it's by recognizing that there is help, and that you can have a 360. You can 100% change your whole path. And now I'm climbing still today for my future, and I'm building it because I know my son is going to he's going to have a wonderful life. But it's because of me, and I had to be selfish and focus on myself to be better for myself and then for everything else.
Right on, bro. All right. Before I go into this last one, I want to talk about this, bro. So you got Robbie Rob's barbecue, buttery garlic, and you have other flavors.
There's other flavors. There's steak dust and anytime rub.
All right. So when did this come about?
Last year, man, I've been on a mission.
This right here. Come on, I need to hear it, bro.
So, what year did we do that barbecue competition?
I was like 3-4 years ago, right?
The one we had here in
bowling
Brentwood.
alley.
Yeah.
Oh, bro, no, that was
2017?
17, 18.
Yeah,
Oh,
2018.
Yeah.
Because I was already making my own little rub then.
Yeah.
And COVID stopped everything.
Yeah.
And so now that I'm on the mission and growing, I'm bringing it back.
Okay.
And so, that's...
So is it in stores now, or is it in a store? Or
pretty much it's word of mouth right now. I do have a website, RobbieRobsBarbecue.com.
Say it again?
RobbieRobsBarbecue.com.
Okay.
But yeah, so pretty much it's, I'm getting it out there.
Okay.
I know there's some things you got to get to make it legally able to do it.
Oh, okay.
What's your favorite out of the three?
Actually,
you only have 3 flavors?
Yeah, for right now.
What's your favorite?
So I have 3 flavors. So the favorite one is the anytime. So that one, you put it on your chicken, your shrimp, anything.
Okay.
Anytime anything.
Okay.
The steak one is really good. It's a mixture of salt and pepper. Those are the 2 main ingredients that you want to put on beef. And then you have your,
Dang, bro. My boy is doing Robbie Rob's barbecue.
Yeah, and so it's
bro, you don't understand how proud I am of you, man.
Mm-hmm.
You had that spirit the day I freaking met you, bro.
So I'm bringing it back, and I'm gonna have, I'm in the works right now. I'm making a Cajun one.
Okay.
And I'm probably gonna start with 5 different flavors.
Right on, bro.
Yeah, but I'm gonna do a Cajun one, and I'm still thinking of something else.
I'm probably gonna take one and try one tonight. We got steaks ready to go, bro.
There you go.
Not the anytime rub. I was staying here.
So I want to talk about this too. My dude has Liberty bug spray.
repels mosquitoes, ants, ticks, fleas, flies, and gnats, and more.
Yeah.
So how'd this come about?
So I've always been playing with essential oils, therapeutic grade essential oils. And being in pest control, there's actually a lot of essential oils that actually repel and kill insects.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people that actually want
natural stuff?
Natural, yeah.
Wow, bro.
And so,
no more spraying that Raid and all those bad chemicals for you? Or?
No, so I still do all that.
Right.
But for this, instead of getting instead of getting all the chemicals, and DEET is really bad for you.
Yeah.
But wait, you can spray this on your skin.
This is all natural repel for your outdoors. You can spray it on your clothes. You can spray it on your skin. It's to help repel and everything else. And then the different products that I have in there, everything's all natural, and it actually has
smells great.
Yeah, and so it has soybean oil in it and witch hazel. So it has the different things, and it also helps moisturize.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you made that?
Yeah.
God,
wow, dude.
Boy.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's moisturizer, and it actually is good for your skin.
Yeah,
and
it smells great. It smells and it feels like a nice lotion.
Yeah. Yeah. And it it has the different essential oils to actually kill off, and you can actually spray it on. You can't, because this is an essential oil. Can't spray it on cats. Cats are actually really sensitive to essential oils, and that's just across the board. Yeah. But you can actually spray it on dog beddings. You can put it on your backpack throughout the day. So that way you end the day positive and you end the day positive. And
beautiful.
Then, so I got those 3. And they're all on Amazon. The Victory, the audiobook should be releasing next week also.
On Amazon?
On Amazon.
Everywhere?
Amazon and whatever is linked with Amazon.
Oh, right on.
So Audible? Audible is part of Amazon, so I would assume.
Yeah. So, and then, whatever. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, bro. That's awesome.
Yeah.
God damn, I'm so proud of you, bro. I'm going to say that like 10 more times before you leave, bro.
Yeah.
You good?
Yeah.
Man, where do I begin with this, bro? I want to make sure we leave this one on a high note. You were chosen to be our first episode for this because my relationship with you and the amount of unbelievable respect that I have for you, especially what you've done with yourself, your transformation. And believe it or not, bro, the last year you've been a huge influence on my transformation. And I want to tell you that out loud in front of everyone, bro. I've been struggling right next to you, my brother. Right? It's not easy, bro. What we've been through and what we go through. Some people go through hardships differently than others, but I find a lot of comfort in knowing you're my brother in life, bro. Right? I know we don't see each other as often as we should, but I know you're grinding and you know that I'm grinding. We're doing the best for our families, our kids. I'm your biggest cheerleader, bro. I talk about your story to many people. Right, I was like, man, I just told a customer the other day, I was like, man, I was bugging this dude and telling him, and he fucking did it. It was fucking awesome to see this, bro, and to see that you're, like I told people recently, that you were in this cocoon. You went into this cocoon, bro, and you buried yourself in there, bro, and you stripped everything bad off you like an eagle, like you said earlier, bro. You went up to your mountain, you broke that fucking your beak and you ripped off your talons, bro, and you let them grow again, right? And you ripped off those heavy fucking feathers off, bro, and you decided I want to live another 30 fucking years, right? Because that's the way it's supposed to be, bro. And you've encouraged me to look at life like that as well, man. We're never going to be 100% healed. Right? It's a battle every day, and it's a battle. It's a good fight that I'm willing to fight every day because I know someone out there just like you and me. And if we can be pillars for them to say they went through it, they're doing it, they're figuring a way out, and hopefully we're pointing someone in the right direction. I know we are through God's work. Yep. So I'm proud of you, bro. I'm proud that you're on here. I know this is not going to be the last episode that we have with you, right? I want to bring you on again because I want people to continuously see your struggle, but your climb in a positive directory, not just personally, but with your business, right? Because the whole purpose of the Roots of Ambition is to show people that it's possible. It's possible through everything, no matter what you're going through. My biggest thing is it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
It's how you finish.
Once I heard my coach say that in high school, it just stayed in my brain. So with all that said, bro, what is next for Mr. Rob Victor Ayres? What do you got planned? What is your goal in the next 5 years?
So I'm even got a 15-year goal.
All right.
So, but yeah, staying rooted and trying to stay grounded with the 5-year goal within the next 5 years. So I'm already in 4 counties. So,
Okay.
but what I want to do is build and grow and have at least hire 2 more technicians and start to just really define and make a presence. That's the main thing is, it's in 5 years, definitely going to be rooted and the growth is going to be there, but, take on, some employees.
Right on, bro.
Yeah.
Right on. It's awesome. Good stuff, dude. Good.
I can't wait to see that,
bro.
Oh, yeah.
This quote that was told to me recently, and I read it. I ended up reading it again, like not even 2 weeks after I first heard it. It was, a smart man learns from his mistakes, but a wise man learns from others' mistakes. So everyone listening to this, everybody in this life is going through a struggle, no matter what it is. Everybody has circumstances. Everybody makes good decisions and everybody makes bad decisions, right? We're not judged by what we do yesterday. We're judged by what we're doing right now. And for yourself to judge yourself and say, what can I do right now that's good for myself and everyone around me? The Roots of Ambition. We're wrapping up our first episode with Mr. Robert Victor Ayres. Catch his book, right? The Victory. It's awesome. And go to his website. What's your website again, bro?
LibertyPestServices.com.
What is the best number they can reach you on?
925-628-3030.
Angel?
We'll link all your websites, your phone number. So please support him, buy some of his cups, buy his book, listen to it. And Rob, thank you for being here. Thank you for being vulnerable. And again, I told you earlier, and I really mean it. I'm very proud of you, and I can't wait to see what the next 5 years looks for you.
I appreciate you guys bringing me on here, and this was a blast. This is fun.
Right on, bro.
Yeah.
So it's not how you start, it's how you finish.
Just guts and a vision, no plan B, just the roots of ambition. We left the horror, no lifeline, no crutch. Just hustle in our hands and a dream to clutch. Fear in the mirror, but we faced it loud. Cause fortune only favors the ones who bow out proud. Burn the ships, no turning around. Put our backs to the edge and our feet on the ground. We talk about the climb, the grit and the scars. The roots run deep and the dreams reach far. Yeah, these are the roots, the roots of ambition. Stories of risk in it all with conviction. From fatherhood to building a brand. We talk about the moment you finally took a stand. It's heart, it's truth, it's vision. This is the roots of ambition, yeah.